We are live.
Okay, thank you very much. So good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Township of Georgian Bay Planning Council for Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:05 a.m. And I'd like to start with, in the spirit of reconciliation, we wish to acknowledge the enduring relationship between Indigenous peoples and the territories they traditionally occupied. We recognize and deeply appreciate the historic connection they have to this place, the land, the water, the sky, and all that live on, in, and above it. We are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all the generations of Indigenous peoples who have taken care of this place and who continue to care for it, and we want to show our respect. Hundreds of years after the first treaties were signed, they remain relevant today. May they guide our decisions and actions. We commit to learn, to educate, to honor sacred places, and to take actions towards real truth and reconciliation. And I think it's appropriate to add, given that this is a planning council, that this is a land acknowledgement, and we must always keep the land in our minds and care for it the way it has been cared for many, many, many generations before us. And with that, I will ask my fellow councilors if they have any declarations of pecuniary interest or any conflicts of interest according to our code of conduct. I'm seeing no hands raised and a few heads shaken, whatever the correct English is. And I'm sure Councilor Cooper could correct me, and we'll proceed. Well, you've got more knowledge in that area than I do. So the first thing we need to do is adopt our agenda. And once I get the right piece of paper in front of me, I will read. Moved by Councilor Bloch, seconded by Councilor Cooper, be it resolved the council adopts the planned agenda of June 15th, 2021 as circulated. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Our next in our agenda is the public meetings held under the authority of the Municipal Act. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for 4 road closing applications. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed shore road closings being considered. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaw and provide for any other information that is relevant to the applications, and staff will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to speak and provide comments to the bylaw being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to the Municipal Act of 2001, C-25, as amended to deal with the following proposed shore road closing bylaws. R21-01 for 24 Stump Bay Lane, R20-14 for 6280 Severn River Shore, R21-02 for 16 Stump Bay Lane, and R21-3 for 400 Bayview Road. To our clerk.
Notice that this public meeting was published in a newspaper, and notice was sent to the abutting neighbors in the close proximity of the property at least 20 days prior to today's meeting.
And to our staff, I believe the first one on our list is R21-01 for 24 Stump Bay Lane.
Mr. Mayor, I'm taking a pecuniary interest on this. I just got back online, so I missed your call for pecuniary interest,
Yes.
But I'll be taking the pecuniary interest on the a 5A.
Okay, so noted. Thank you very much. Okay. Excuse me, who is the staff who will be handling this particular file?
That would be myself.
Ms. Way, over to you, please.
Thank you. I just had to make note of the declaration there. I'm just going to share my screen. And hopefully this goes properly. Do you see the public meetings held under the authority?
We do, thank you.
Perfect. So this land swap and road application R21-01 is for 24 Stump Bay Lane and 6 Mile Lake. The township is looking to acquire ownership of Stump Bay Lane in exchange for the original road allowance, as has been requested by the landowner as part of a land swap for the township. The landowner is acquiring the original road allowance of 793 square meters, which is noted as part 2 in the survey, in exchange for the property of Stump Bay Lane that is located over this property, which is 905 square meters, noted as part 1. The applicant is required to pay the administrative and legal fees associated with this land exchange. So the location map will show you the subject lands of 24 Stump Bay Lane. And you'll notice how the road allowance runs through. Historically, they run through the water, unfortunately. So it runs down over top.
Clarke Way, the screen isn't progressing. We only see the title page. It's not scrolling down to the.
Wonderful.
Well, I thought you'd like to know.
That's helpful. Do you see like the PowerPoint, or do you see it as I'm presenting it in presentation mode?
We see that on the left-hand side, the listing of all the screens.
Okay. So let's try. Now, can you see the location map?
Yes, yes, we can.
Perfect.
All right. Back to you.
Thanks. So you can see where the road allowance runs, the white line on the right-hand side of your screen. So that road allowance actually runs straight through over top of where 24 Stump Bay comes down. And then Stump Bay Lane, as you can see, to the top of the property runs a little bit through the top. So those are the 2 main parcels that we're speaking to. So here's an aerial photo view. It's very treed. And here's the survey. So you can note that part 2, which is the portion over top of 24 Stump Bay Lane that has water on both sides. That is part of the road allowance that will be acquired by the township. And up to the northern part of the survey, you can see part 1, which is where the existing road of Stump Bay Lane actually runs over top of over top of 24 Stump Bay Lane. So those are the 2 parcels. So the township will be taking ownership of part 1, and the applicant will be taking ownership of part 2. Do you have any questions regarding this application?
Council. Councilor Bochek.
Thank you. Can you, I didn't see in there the original application. Can you give me the date the original application was submitted?
The original application?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that information offhand. Sorry, just let me. These were not my original files, so my apologies. I would have to get back to you on that information, sorry.
Thank you.
I have one question for you, and I just wanted to confirm this, that the survey that we have been given does not show the entire extent of the current property of 24 Stump Lane, I'm presuming, because it doesn't seem to show the rest of the shoreline on 6 Mile Bay and Crooked Bay. I just want, the only reason I'm asking is, see, part 1 seems to extend farther above the horizontal line, if you will. And I just want to make sure that they weren't acquiring a piece of property that should go to a neighbor, or weren't giving away a neighbor's piece of property. Let me rephrase that.
No, so we're acquiring part 1, which is over top of 24 Stump Bay Lane. In the aerial images, I do believe there is a portion of Stump Bay Lane that may go over top of the neighboring property slightly, But part 2 is entirely over Stump A Lane, which is the portion that the applicant is acquiring.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that this survey does not cover the entire property of 24 Stump Lane.
No, it covers the portions that are relevant
No.
to this application.
Just wanted to confirm that. Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Well, then I have in front of me, well, sorry, I guess we didn't ever check to see whether the applicant wished to speak to the matter at all.
Mhm.
I apologize.
If they wish to speak, they can unmute themselves.
Can you hear us?
Now we can. I apologize for not asking earlier.
Okay, that's quite all right. To answer your question of when the application was submitted, it was submitted late December 2020.
Sorry, I have the official submitted date was January. I just received this January 4th, 2021.
Well,
Maybe,
that's, we sent it before the end of the year, but
okay, so it
go
probably,
with January 4th.
so yeah, processed in our files January 4th of this year.
Okay.
Now, there was a question about the survey not showing the entire property of 24 something.
Sorry, we just lost your voice.
The whole property is shown.
I'm afraid we didn't quite hear what you just said.
I believe he stated the whole property is shown.
I'm
It
afraid
only
we're not.
goes, the survey that was submitted shows the whole property. The one on the screen only shows part, but it's almost all the way over to the water.
Okay, thank you. All right, council, are you ready to vote? I have moved by Councillor Jarvis. I'm going to make it seconded by Councillor Bocheck. Be it resolved that council passes the closing bylaw to stop up, close, and convey part of the original shore road allowance in front of Lot 7, Concession 10, Baxter, being Part 1 of 35R-26496, now in the Township of Georgian Bay. Do I have the right one in front of me? I'm not sure I have the right resolution in front of me because the plan that we have here, unless it's a different, because the plan number is slightly different.
Yeah, it should be lot 18.
The registered plan number is
26.
-26456.
26456? Yeah, maybe that's right.
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry, I had the wrong one in front of me. Can I try that again? With my apologies once again. Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved that council pass the exchange bylaw to provide for the exchange of land being part of broken lot 18, concession 1, Gibson, part 1 of 35R-26456, that works, and part of the road allowance between the townships of Baxter and Gibson, part 2, 35R-26456, now in the township of Georgian Bay. And the council passed a closing bylaw to stop up and close all that part of the road allowance between townships of Baxter and Gibson, designated as Part 2, 35R-26456, now Township of Georgian Bay, in the District Municipality of Muskoka. And the council passed a dedication bylaw to dedicate part of broken lot 18, concession 1, Gibson, designated as Part 1, 35R-26456, as public highway in the Township of Georgian Bay in the District Municipality of Muskoka. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mrs. and Mr. Barker, for your participation with this file.
Well, we appreciate having this thing go to council and get included in today's be too far, to be quite honest. But thankfully, it's done.
Yep. Well, thank you very
Where-
much.
Where do we go from here?
You'll be contacted by staff and legal counsel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our agenda is the application will close Shore Road Allowance R20-14 of 6289 Severn River Shore.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are.
Oh. And too many buttons. So the Shore Road Allowance has been requested by the applicants to build a dry land boathouse. It is for 901 square meters at a cost of $8 per square meter for the purchase price of $7,208 plus HST. I have too many screens. My apologies here. There we go. Here you can see the location, the subject lands where the SRA is available and is purchased already on the one side and not on their neighboring side. Here is an aerial view. And here's the survey, and you'll note part 1 is where to the north of the survey, or to the north of the screen, is the subject lands to be purchased. And the applicant is available to speak if you wish.
There we go. And I'm just wondering if the applicant has anything they wish to add to the presentation?
No, I don't think so, unless there's any questions for us.
Okay, thank you. Council, are there any questions? I'm seeing nobody shaking their head. So therefore, or seeing everybody shake their head, nobody raising their hand. Moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Wienko. Be it resolved that council passed a closing bylaw to stop up, close, and convey part of the original Shore Road Allowance in front of Lot 7, Concession 10, Baxter, being Part 1 of 35R-26496, now in the Township of Georgian Bay, for the purchase price of $7,208 plus HST. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And we now have our third report from our clerk in regards to Shore Road Allowance R21-02 and R21-03 for Stump Bay Lane and Bayview Road. To the clerk.
So this application is 2 road allowances that are abutting properties. So they're being presented together today as one presentation. So the Shore Road Allowance and an original road allowance has been requested by both applicants as part of their buildings are on the road allowance. R21-02 is the SRA. Part 1 is 269 square meters at a cost of $8 per square meter for a total purchase price of $2,152. And the road allowance noted as Part 2 is 89 square meters at a cost of $6 per square meter for a purchase price of $534. The total cost is $2,686 plus HST. Application R21-03, the SRA noted as Part 4 is 266 square meters at a cost of $8 per square meter for a purchase price of $2,128. And the road allowance, Parts 3 and 5, is 1,171 square meters at a cost of $6 per square meter for a purchase price of $7,026 for a total cost of $9,154 plus HST. Here you'll note the 2 subject lands. And the road allowance is the white space kind of in between that will be divided up and noted on the survey. Here is an aerial view, and you'll notice both properties are within that designated road allowance, or the structures are within that designated road allowance. And here is the survey that notes parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I believe we have the applicants in attendance. I'll just bring them over for you. Marion England and Jamie Vieira are both in attendance today, Your Worship.
And so I'll ask the applicants then if they have anything they would like to add to the presentation.
I have nothing. It's Mary in England.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm not hearing anything from Mr. Vieira. So
Sorry, I was muted there. Yeah, no, I'm good. I believe that's all correct. Thank you.
all right, thank you. And I see that Councilor Wienko knows my next step is going to be ask whether anybody has any questions. So Councilor Wienko.
Thank you. I have no problem with this application, but I just wanted to talk to, I don't know if it was Ken or planning. How far afield do you send the notice for this application? Because I'm just 2 doors over and I never got a notice for this application. So I wonder how far it goes.
It only goes to the abutting property owners. So 2 doors over is too
Okay,
far.
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Bochek.
Thank you. I guess I could address this to Brad or to Karen. My understanding is that stopping up and closing shore road allowances is different than closing shore road or road allowances. And on road allowances, we are to notify the abutting properties, but on shore road allowances, I thought there was an 800 meter disbursement.
No, it's still just the abutting property owners,
Okay, thank you.
as well as the newspaper notice, and we post on the website. But as far as mail outs go, it's just the abutting property owners.
And there was no abutting property owners that objected to this application?
No, we've received no public comments.
Thank you.
I just want, oh, sorry, Councilor Jarvis.
So I had lots of fun getting myself totally confused over these, the land swap and the earlier one and this one, and really enjoyed the name of that, Stump Bay Lane. Is this road closing part of what we just did in the land swap and the earlier issue that we dealt with? I mean, is there a relationship between these? It looks like there is, but I mean, problem with all these surveys.
So, I mean, when Ontario was first surveyed, it's back in, I don't know what, 100 years ago-ish. It's the original road allowance is the same original road allowance when someone kind of went and drew a ruler and drew all the lines out into the water. So it's part of the same road allowance, but but it's separate because they're not attached. Does that make sense? Because the water's in the middle.
So this has got nothing to do with the land swap we did in the first issue here today. Okay.
For neighbors.
Thank you.
For neighbors, but yeah.
Yeah.
They just happen to be on the same meeting, that's all.
How convenient.
Sorry.
Yeah, I can't help but just make a comment. We know that the people who laid out these original lines way back, 150 years ago or whatever it was, had no respect for geography. And we're still living with those consequences now with like municipal boundaries, or just like a straight line put across a map, regardless of where the river may be or the mountain or what have you. So one of those curiosities of our history. My question, and I just wanted to confirm this, is I believe that adjacent to part 3, is that Crown land?
I believe so.
Okay, I just wanted to confirm that, because that explains why the neighbor to the south is acquiring part 3 as opposed to the neighbor to the north, because they had that option.
Yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions, council? Councilor Cooper?
Just further to the point you're raising, we're not selling any road allowance or shore road allowance in front of Crown land, correct?
Road allowance, yes, not a shore road allowance.
But in front of Crown land?
Adjacent to it. Part 3 is adjacent to Crown land.
Adjacent, but we're not, I just want to make sure that we don't get into what we've run into in the past where we've sold road allowance or shore road allowance in front of Crown land mistakenly.
The province is always providing notice as well, and we always receive written confirmation that they have no objections prior to bringing this forward to a public meeting.
Okay, but I wanted to hear the answer to my question, which is this shore road allowance that's in front of Crown land?
It's part of the road allowance is beside Crown land.
But we're not taking away, we're not offering up a right to a property owner that we're taking away from the Crown. I just want to make sure that's not what we're doing here.
No, the Crown doesn't want it. They've waived their rights.
Okay, thank you.
I have in front of me, moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Be it resolved that council pass the closing bylaw to stop up, close, and convey part of the road allowance between the geographic townships of Baxter and Gibson, being parts 1 to 5, both inclusive, on 35R-26474, now in the township of Georgian Bay, being 16 Stump Bay Lane and 400 Bayview Drive, for a total cost of $11,840 plus HST. All those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. And that ends our public meeting portion held under the authority of the Municipal Act. And so part 6 of our agenda is public meeting held under the authority of the Planning Act, which means you get to hear me read another speech. This morning, there's a public meeting scheduled for 2 proposed zoning bylaw amendments and 1 official plan amendment. I will briefly summarize the procedure to be utilized for the meeting. First, the clerk will advise council as to when, how, and to whom notice of the public meeting was circulated for the proposed amendments being considered. The clerk will also advise of the appeal procedures. Next, staff will advise of the purpose and effect of the bylaws and provide any other information that is relevant to the applications, and the clerk will summarize any correspondence on file. From there, the public will have an opportunity to provide comments on the amendments being considered. Please be respectful of time and be concise with your comments. All commentators are requested to state their name and address. After the public discussion, the public meeting will be closed. Council will then have an opportunity to provide comments for clarification. I now declare this meeting to be a public meeting pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act to deal with the following proposed amendments. Z 21-06 and O 21-01 for Clarke and Z 20-19 for Shell. To our clerk.
Notice of the public meetings were sent by first-class mail to the respective owners and assessed persons within 120 to 800 meters of the property, subject to the proposed applications, and to those persons and agencies likely to have an interest in the applications. These notices were sent at least 30 days prior to today's meeting. Included in each notice was an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed applications and a key map showing the location of the properties or a description of the lands to be affected by the proposed amendments. Other relevant information may have also been provided. These circulations were all provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and the Township of Georgian Bay Official Plan. Members of the public are advised at this point that unless they make an oral or written submission to council before council makes a decision on these applications, that any subsequent appeal to the local planning appeals tribunal may be dismissed by the tribunal. Anyone who wishes to be notified of council's decision respecting the proposed zoning bylaw amendments must submit a written request to the planning department.
Okay, thank you. And I believe I saw Mr. Oster on the screen a minute ago. This first presentation is yours, sir.
Is good morning,
Please go
Council.
ahead.
Just going to bring up the presentation here. And everybody can see the first slide.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right, so good morning. Today we have a public meeting for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment. The application numbers are O2101 and Z2106. Lands are located at 2 Island 2170 within the Cognition community. Here we have a overview location map of the subject property shown here in gray. It is located just west of the Freddy Channel and northeast of Kennebec Island. The 2018 aerial imagery of the property, so you can see here in yellow, is the approximate location of the proposed dwelling that is to be set back more than 20 meters to the high water mark of Georgian Bay, as well as the location of the existing dwelling that is proposed to be converted to a sleeping cabin. There is also an existing dock located on the property here. So just an overview of the policy framework. The lands are considered to be rural lands within the context of the PPS. They are designated waterfront within the district official plan and within the township official plan, as well as located within the Cognition coastal waterfront community. And the property is currently zoned Cognition Shoreline Residential Island, SRI 7. So the purpose and effect of the applications is to establish a site-specific official plan policy and zoning bylaw provisions for the subject lands related to built form standards for the dwelling and the sleeping cabin, as well as to permit a sleeping cabin within the front yard. So as proposed by the applicant's agent, this is the site-specific official plan policy, being that on the lot known municipally as 2 Island 2170 Cognition, Township of Georgian Bay, District Municipality, Muskoka, a sleeping cabin be permitted within the front yard setback with a minimum setback of 2.5 meters to the high water mark and a maximum gross floor area of 93 square meters. And further, that a maximum gross floor area of the dwelling shall not exceed 26 square meters per 1,000 square meters of lot area. And further, that the maximum width of a dwelling shall not exceed 29 meters. To implement the proposed official plan amendment, the applicant has requested the following site-specific zoning bylaw provisions. The first being a minimum front yard setback of 2.5 meters to a sleeping cabin. This would recognize the setback of the existing structure. A maximum gross floor area of 93 square meters for a sleeping cabin. And that provision would also recognize the gross floor area of that existing structure. A maximum gross floor area calculation of 26 square meters per 1,000 square meters of lot area for a dwelling, and a maximum dwelling width of 29 meters. Planning staff have recommended that a holding symbol be applied through the rezoning, with the condition for removal of that hold being a site plan agreement. So the applicant provided this survey and site plan of the subject property. So you can see here the existing dwelling that is proposed to be converted to a sleeping cabin, the existing dock, and the location of the proposed dwelling. This thick black line shown here is the 20-meter setback from the high water mark of Georgian Bay, and the dwelling would comply with the 20-meter front yard setback. Some elevation drawings of the proposed dwelling. Within the Cognition community, the height of a building is to respect the tree line and to not exceed 1.5 stories. The applicant is proposing a 1-story building that does comply with the maximum building height. Just a quick overview of the comments that were received. There were 2 letters from members of the public, one of support, one of no objection, provided that a second sleeping cabin would not be permitted. The Cognition Community Association stated no issue subject to addressing district comments. The district did provide some comments with respect to species at risk that the applicant is currently addressing. and stated that if council is satisfied that the setbacks are appropriate, they're not opposed to approval, provided that the site plan agreement addresses items such as phosphorus management, stormwater management, and vegetation retention. And the building department did comment that the septic system would require upgrade or replacement. So just an overview of where we are in the application process. The applicant has made a complete application for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. We are now at the public meeting stage where staff have prepared an information report and presented to council. This is the opportunity for members of the public, members of council, and any applicable agencies to comment on the application. The next steps include the applicant addressing any of the comments that are received. And then once everything has been addressed, it would return back to council with a comprehensive policy review and recommendation from staff to council. And then council would make their decision on the application. So that is everything that I have for council this morning. The agent is in attendance and does have a presentation that he would like to make to council as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oster. And Madam Clerk, I believe that he's already made reference to the correspondence that we have received. I don't know if there's any other correspondence that may have come in since the report was prepared.
I just have one letter of support from Brian Neely, one letter of no objection from the district, and one letter proposing additional restrictions from Mrs. Kathy Cooper.
Okay, thank you. And I see the agent as Mr. Morgan. You've placed yourself on screen here, and you understand you also would like to make a presentation for the public and council's further knowledge. So I say, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I'd appreciate that opportunity, your worship and members of council. My name is Josh Morgan. I'm a land use planning consultant based in Aurelia. I'm here today representing Jamie Clarke and Megan Carney, who are the owners of 2 Island 2170 in the Cognoscene area. I wonder if Mr. Oster or Miss Way would put my presentation on the screen, or rather if I could share my screen and flip through my slides.
Whatever is easier for you, Mr. Morgan, you should have the ability to share your screen.
Okay, I'll do that. Thanks. I'll share my screen. I think Mr. Oster's presentation was quite fulsome. And so what I'll do, if I share my screen, then I'll be able to then flip past slides so that I don't reiterate much that Mr. Oster said. So I'll go ahead right now and share my screen. Oh. Okay, can everybody see the first slide here?
Yes.
All right, great, thank you. Okay, so what we see here is just an aerial image, of course, of the Clarke Carney Island, located in the Cognoscene Special Policy Area. The total area of the island is 9,155 square meters, so just shy of a hectare and just over 2 acres. The island is developed, as Mr. Oster mentioned, with a seasonal cottage. It has 2 bedrooms. It's situated, if you can see my cursor, it's situated on the eastern periphery of the island. It has 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and 1 small kitchen. And it has a legal non-complying front yard setback of 2.5 meters to the high water mark. In addition to the small cottage, there are 2 storage sheds, and as you can see in the image here, a dock which extends from the north-facing side of the island. Just to give you more of a regional context, of course, Kennebec Island to the southwest. I believe this is Burnt Island here to the southeast, the Freddy Channel off to the east. So the subject property, of course, sort of central in the image here. The shoreline on the north of the island is typified by low-density seasonal residential cottages. As I mentioned, the Freddy Channel is situated immediately east of the island with shoreline residential cottages in this vicinity as well, if you can see my cursor. Both Kennebec Island and Burnt Island are situated south of the island, Kennebec and Burnt. And the shoreline to the west of the subject property here is also typified by low-density residential cottages. Just a quick policy mapping here. So this is an excerpt from the District of Muskoka's official plan, which identifies the property as being designated waterfront area. This is an excerpt from the township's official plan, which identifies the property as being within the Cogmachine special policy area. And an excerpt from the township zoning bylaw, which identifies the island as being zoned Cogmachine Shoreline Residential Island Zone, or SRI 7. So just an overview of the proposed development. So the applicants are proposing to construct a centrally located 2-bedroom, 1-story dwelling with a gross floor area of 232 square meters, or just shy of 2,500 square feet, and a width of 28.3 meters. The dwelling has been sited with a setback of 20.9 meters from the high water mark and a height of a height of 5.9 meters. So that was both of those items, being the setback and the height, were very deliberate, design intentions in order to, first of all, maintain a low profile of the cottage as viewed from adjacent properties and from the water body, of course, and also to maintain and to respect the direction provided in the district's official plan and the township's official plan and the township zoning bylaw as it pertains to setbacks from the water. So we're holding a setback of 20.9 meters. So concurrent with the development of the new dwelling, the applicants propose to construct a boat port in accordance with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. The design of the boat port has not yet occurred, but I've had extensive discussions with both Jamie Clarke and Megan Carney about the boat port, and both are aware that the boat port, whenever it comes forward for a building permit, must comply with the direction provided in the zoning bylaw in terms of its dimensions and also its area. So in addition, the applicants propose to convert the existing 2-bedroom cottage of about 1,000 square feet into a sleeping cabin. And in order to do that, they'll have to remove the kitchen. So the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment applications before you today, most of the provisions within both of those applications are recognitions of the existing location and size of the converted sleeping cabin. So the proposed dwelling, together with the conversion of the existing cottage to a sleeping cabin, will result in a lot coverage of 4%, which is less than the 5% lot coverage that is permitted by table 7.2 of the zoning bylaw. And again, this was a deliberate effort, the lot coverage, to preserve both the environmental and the visual integrity of the property. In terms of servicing, so the existing cottage is serviced by a septic bed and a septic tank, which were installed and inspected in 2007. Through recent discussions with the township septic inspector, we learned that in order to continue to utilize the existing septic bed, the applicants will need to decrease the combined gross floor area by 25 square meters or 270 square feet. So, and they'll also have to put in a new septic tank. So the bed itself can remain and will remain, but the tank must be replaced, and a larger tank, a 6,000 liter tank, will have to be brought to the site. So this information just came to light late last week. And so my clients are now consulting with their architect to determine if it makes more sense to essentially remove 270 square feet from the proposed cottage, or to remove 270 square feet from the converted sleeping cabin. So we haven't yet came to that conclusion, but what I'm here to tell you today is the intention is to utilize the existing septic bed and bring the gross floor area down by 270 square feet. And the clarity in terms of where that 270 square feet will come from will be presented to council, I assume, in the staff report when these applications are brought to council for a decision. So you will get that clarity. We just don't have that exact clarity for you right now. Okay, so I'll just give you a bit of a virtual tour of the island here. So I was on the property on a beautiful day in early November, just last year. So this is an image of the existing cottage, which is proposed to be converted to a sleeping cabin. This is an image of the existing cottage as viewed from the east. So if you were, I suppose, boating in from or out of the Freddie Channel, this would be the view of the subject property from the water, or the view, I'm sorry, of the existing cottage proposed to be converted to a sleeping cabin from the water. This is just an image. I was standing on the shoreline taking a picture of the dock. So this is facing north, just to give the public and members of council an idea of the existing docking, which is proposed to remain exactly the same. This is an image taken from the middle of the island, basically right where the proposed cottage, where the cottage is proposed to be located. So I'm facing north taking this picture, and you can see the dock here in the background of the picture. This is a picture. I just turned around in this case, and now I'm facing basically due south. I believe, my memory serves me correctly, the sort of the channel between Kennebec and Burnt Islands. I think that would be where my cursor is right here, just to give perspective for members of council and the public. So basically the location of the proposed cottage is right smack dab in the middle of the island. Very, very little vegetation to be removed in order to accommodate the proposed cottage. And again, the proposed cottage has been designed from a height perspective to stay within the tree line of the island. Mr. Oster's already been over this, but this is the site plan that we submitted in support of our applications. The basis for this site plan was the topographic survey, which was completed in either July or August of 2020. So it's completely up to date. It reflects the location of the existing cottage, reflects the location of the existing deck, shed. And then of course, most importantly for consideration today is the 20-meter setback line from the high water mark all the way around the island, and the location of the proposed cottage, which exceeds the minimum 20-meter setback. And that setback that I'm speaking to is not just to the cottage, but also to the associated decking. So there's absolutely no encroachment whatsoever of any new structures proposed within 20 meters of the shoreline. All of that area will be maintained in its existing natural state. This is just basically a colored image of what Mr. Oster illustrated earlier of the building elevations. Sorry. This would be I guess, what would I say this? This would be the south facing side of the cottage. So probably the most predominant view of the cottage. If you were coming up through the channel that separates Kennebec and Burnt Islands, this would be the view of the cottage. You can see it's a very low profile, built sort of right into the rock and within the tree cover. And then this image you see here is would be what you would view from the north side of the island. Again, a very low profile. I'm just going to scan down now, bear with me. We've seen those images, so I'll just keep going in the interest of time. So just to go through the applications again, very briefly here. So we have two applications for consideration today, one being the zoning bylaw amendment and the other being the official plan amendment. So we're proposing to rezone the island from the Cognishine Shoreline Residential Island Zone to a site-specific Cognishine Shoreline Residential Island Zone. And the site-specific permissions being requested are to recognize the existing front yard setback of the converted sleeping cabin. Also to establish a minimum gross floor area for the new cottage of 26 square meters per 1,000 square meters of lot area, whereas the zoning bylaw currently permits a maximum of 25. So we're just barely over the permitted gross floor area. And then the next provision is to recognize the existing gross floor area of the converted sleeping cabin, which is 93 meters squared, or about 1,000 square feet. And finally, a provision to, to recognize the 2.5 meter setback of the converted sleeping cabin and to recognize its location in the front yard. So of the site-specific zoning provisions, 3 of the 4 are simply recognitions of existing condition on the property. Mr. Oster read, this is the official plan amendment text. Mr. Oster has read that already, so I won't go through that again, but for the most part, it recognizes the existing condition of the sleeping cabin while also requesting permission for 26 meters of gross floor area per 1,000 square meters of lot area, which is just 1 square meter greater than the official plan permits. So just my opinion on land use compatibility. I mean, no matter whether I'm working on a project in Cognachine or in Port Severn or in downtown Aurelia, land use compatibility is, in my opinion anyway, really the most sort of critical determination of the appropriateness of a planning application. So having visited the site in order to get a fulsome understanding of the Cognachine community and the adjacent properties and the developed nature of the area, I believe that the application represents certainly compatibility with the Cognachine area, and I've reached that conclusion for the following reasons. First, that the site plan has been designed to retain a 20-meter vegetative protection area around the shoreline, that the building envelope, including the decking, have been designed to exceed the minimum shoreline setback, that the height of the building has been restricted to 5.9 meters, which was a deliberate attempt to set the building within the island's tree cover, and that the proposed dwelling, the proposed deck, together with the conversion of the existing dwelling to a sleeping cabin, would result in a lot coverage of 4%, whereas the maximum lot coverage is 5%. And finally, the proposed dwelling will not obstruct the views of any of the surrounding residences. Just really, I'm not going to go through every line of this. I'm happy to answer any questions that pertain to policy, but just in terms of policy, as Mr. Oster mentioned, the property is considered to be rural lands within the context of the provincial policy statement. Resource-based recreational uses, which includes recreational dwellings, are permitted within rural areas as long as they're deemed to be locally appropriate. And I do believe that this application would meet that test of being locally appropriate. The PPS, as you know, also speaks to servicing. Servicing must be appropriate in the context of the adequacy of a site to handle, let's say, sanitary service, for instance. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been in very recent discussions with the township septic inspector, and we've kind of established an understanding of what must be done in order to utilize the existing system. We do not want to have to build a new system. I think from a planning perspective and from an ecological perspective, it's best to use what's there. My clients agree with that. So we've sort of reached this level of understanding with the township. And then from a natural heritage perspective, of course, an environmental perspective, the PPS has very clear policy language related to natural heritage. And in order to ensure the protection of the island, a number of measures have been taken, including making sure to respect the 20-meter setback from the high water mark. And again, nothing on this property will change physically. The septic bed will remain the same. The sleeping cabin will remain the same. The docking is already there. So we're really just talking about the construction of a 2,500 square foot cottage right in the middle of the rocky part of the island. In terms of the District of Muskoka's official plan, as I mentioned earlier, it's designated waterfront area. The District of Muskoka permits residential recreational development within the waterfront area, but it must be compatible and it must protect the ecological features and functions of the water bodies and the shorelines of the district. So of course, I've reviewed the district's comments, which are very supportive actually of this application. I've also spoken with the planner that authored the district's letter, who seems very comfortable with our applications as well, subject of course to site plan approval. And as council is aware, township staff is recommending that a holding provision be placed on the zoning bylaw amendment that would be removed only after a site plan agreement had been executed with the township and with my client. So I believe in that case, the district's considerations and recommendations have been satisfied. And I'm almost at the end here. So just in terms of the Township of Georgian Bay's official plan, as you're well aware that, the township's official plan has an extensive array of policies associated with development in waterfront areas. Probably the most extensive list of policies that I've worked with. I do a lot of work in the Muskoka area and in the northern part of Simcoe County. And so what I've tried to do here is to illustrate what I consider to be the most salient official plan policies just for the purpose of this discussion. And again, happy to answer any policy questions that may arise. So first and foremost, section F this section, F.2.3.2, this section relates to servicing. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we've been in recent discussion with the township septic inspector and have reached an understanding about what needs to be done in order to utilize the existing system. This official plan, of course, speaks to setbacks, 20-meter setback from the high water mark. This application respects that direction at 20.9 meters. The official plan speaks to the importance of protecting tree cover and vegetation, retaining that. This application would keep a naturalized area around a 20-meter perimeter of the shoreline, which is what the township's official plan is looking for. There's direction in the official plan related to sleeping cabins. Basically, the direction in terms of sleeping cabins is that the sleeping cabin has to be accessory in nature to the primary cottage. And so what we're seeking through the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment is to restrict the size of the existing structure to what it is right now. It could not increase any further. Also, the township's official plan says that for an island of less than 1 hectare, only 1 sleeping cabin is permitted. So we're not seeking any additional number of sleeping cabins. We're respecting the direction in terms of the number of sleeping cabins. If any future owner ever wanted to come to the municipality and establish a second sleeping cabin, they would have to come back to council and seek a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment for that. So I wanted to just provide satisfaction to the municipality. And also, I believe that one of the members of the public, Ms. Cooper, I believe, was a bit concerned that this property could ultimately build a second sleeping cabin. That's not the case here. The policies would not allow a second sleeping cabin. In terms of built form, again, the official plan speaks to restricting the size of a cottage to 25 square meters for every 1,000 square meters of lot area. Our application is seeking 26 square meters for every 1,000 square meters of lot area. So I definitely believe it meets the intent of the direction provided in the official plan. Building design speaks to keeping high profile or keeping a low profile. We've done that with the 5.9 meter height. Natural heritage policies, I've already spoken to those. And then implementation, again, and this is an important piece, I'm sure, for council and for members of the public. So I can stand up here and tell you, what our proposal, what our proposal would like to do, what we would like to build, but it's really the site plan approval process which will provide the municipality with further authority to ensure that what we're proposing is actually built. So that site plan approval process will formalize the exact location of the cottage, the usage of the existing septic system, the vegetation retention area. So in my opinion, the municipality still, even, if we're able to get the approval of the official plan amendment, the zoning bylaw amendment, the power, the control will still be in the hands of the municipality through the site plan approval process. So just finally, the concluding remark as a planner. So on the basis of the foregoing, it's my opinion that the applications are consistent with the policies of the provincial policy statement, that they conform to the intent of both the township and the district's official plan. And I do believe that this proposal is compatible with the Cognizant area and represents good land use planning. Thank you very much. Happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Morgan. That was a very thorough, if somewhat lengthy presentation. But there may be more questions, but I'll first inquire of our clerk, Ms. Way. Are there any members of the public that you're aware of that might want to add comments? I don't think I saw any, but you know the list better than I.
There is no member of public in attendance for this application.
All right, thanks very much. Council, questions, comments? Councillor Cooper, followed by Councillor.
Just some points of clarification. I'd like to start though with thanking both Mr. Oster and Mr. Morgan for the report. Very comprehensive. Was also very pleased to hear how comprehensive our official plan is and our zoning bylaws. That's most encouraging. We're trying to protect Georgian Bay, so good to hear. Thank you. I just wanted to get some clarity around a few things. One was the comment that was made, I believe, by Mr. Morgan that the kitchen would be removed. And I think what you're trying to say there is that the contents of the kitchen would be removed, not the kitchen itself, until such time as you decide, or your client decides, where they're going to come up with 200 and whatever it is square feet. Was that correct?
Yes, Councillor Cooper, that's correct. So in order to be defined as a sleeping cabin, which is what we're proposing, the kitchen, not the area of the kitchen necessarily, but the actual, the sinks and the appliances within the kitchen need to be removed. And I suspect that, sorry, I just to add to that, I suspect that although I've never had an application such as this in the township of Georgian Bay, I suspect that the township would utilize the site plan agreement in order to enforce that.
Thank you for that clarification. And I just have a few other little quick questions. And by the way, I think generally this is a very well presented application, and for the most part is very good. I, however, do have a few things that I'd like to comment upon. And one is that in I think a previous report, Brad, I thought I saw in red the size of the property was 3 acres and somewhere in one of the reports, and is or over 3 acres, and as such would have qualified for a second sleeping cabin. So one of the points I had brought forward for this meeting today was around that issue, that you need a hectare or 2.5 acres to qualify for a second sleeping cabin. But I'm now discovering that it's under or 2 acres, which would mean that it wouldn't qualify. And so that brings me comfort. But other than the fact that we are approving a sleeping cabin over 600 square feet, I'm sympathetic to the circumstances, as long as we make sure in the future that there's no kitchen, this doesn't become another dwelling. But could you answer the question about the 2 acres versus 3 or whatever acres I saw before in a report? And then I have one final thing.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify through the mayor to Councillor Cooper, this subject property is less than 1 hectare. So in the township zoning bylaw, in order to permit 2 sleeping cabins, you do have to have a lot area of more than 1 hectare. This property does not meet that requirement, so therefore they would still be limited to just 1 sleeping cabin.
I understand that, but did I read in one of the reports that there was more acreage? Because I read it, I think, twice, and I'm not the only one that came to that conclusion. So I'm just, I'm glad it's been clarified. I'm just saying that there was information, I thought, that showed over 2.5 acres, therefore could potentially qualify for a second sleeping cabin. So I just wanted to
looking at my report here, and it does say that it's less than 1 hectare, but in a future report, we'll make sure to comb through everything and make sure that the correct lot area is shown.
That's fine, thank you. And the final thing is that given that there's some discussion with the planning department or the building department, et cetera, on this application, one of the things that I would like to sort of point out is that we're having a public meeting now with only part of the information. And I would like to understand why, when it comes back to council, why it wouldn't be a second public meeting to allow the public to comment on the final presentation, as opposed to the way we're going at it at the moment. And I think this has been discussed in the past, but it is I see it as a bit of a glitch in our system. So could you comment on that, Brad, please? Thank you.
Sure. So through the mayor to Councillor Cooper, the Planning Act does require only 1 public meeting for Planning Act applications. So this is an opportunity for internal staff departments to comment, members of the public, applicable agencies, anybody who wishes to make comments on an application, they do so through this process to bring it forward to the public meeting. Any of those comments are presented to council, as well as the applicant is made aware of those, and then they can address them in subsequent submissions and provide further information to address those comments. Provided that the request that the applicant is proposing for any of the applications is not increasing. So say they propose to further increase the size of a sleeping cabin moving forward, or something similar to that, requesting more relief, then a subsequent public meeting would be required. But in this case, as we understand, there's no further requests that are being proposed, so a second public meeting is not required.
So to follow up on that, I'm not asking about what the Planning Act requires. I'm asking, does it preclude a second public meeting? We've discussed this before, and I think also the Planning Act might be suggesting a fully completed application, should it not, as opposed to one that's, there's still a lot of negotiation going on around certain matters. Could I get your comment on that, please, Brad? Thank you.
So in the past, there has been applications that through council's resolution when it came forward for the first public meeting, that they have requested that a second public meeting be held. So if council wanted to entertain that, that choice is up to them. It doesn't preclude a second public meeting though, the Planning Act.
So if it came back to council, just to finish on this, it could be a public meeting and council could still pass it and do pretty much what we would be doing at the next meeting anyway, just that we would entertain comment from the public. Is that correct?
Correct. Members of the public could present or speak at that meeting if it was public.
So in the interest of transparency, I'm just suggesting that we consider that. Thank you very much. And thanks for answering all these questions.
Thank you. Councillor Rienko, followed by Councillor Bochek.
Just a bit of follow-up on that. I noticed in the report here that there's somewhat of an environmental study out that is being conducted. And I'm just trying to find out what's the status of that environmental study going on. And I assume that'll be completed before this application comes back. And also the issue of this this 200 and some square feet that has to be reduced. Would that have an impact on the application where we talk about what 26 square meters? Would that amount be reduced?
I can speak to that if it would be helpful.
Go ahead, please.
Sure, thanks to Councillor Wianco. So in terms of your question about the 26 square meters of gross floor area per 1,000 square meters of lot area that we're seeking. So yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation, the combined gross floor area on the island needs to come down by 270 square feet or 25 square meters in order to continue to utilize the existing septic bed. So when these applications come back to council for a decision, you will see one of two things. Either the gross floor area being requested for the cottage will decrease, or the gross floor area related to the converted sleeping cabin will decrease. One of those two numbers will decrease. It's just that we're trying to decide which one of those two numbers we want to bring down, and weren't in a position to basically make that decision yet. So the applications that come back to council will be seeking less relief from the official plan and the zoning bylaw than was originally circulated to the public and circulated to council. In terms of the district's comment that they say it is recommended that the MECP be consulted to ensure that the proposed development will not have any negative impacts on species at risk or their habitat. So there's no request for a study. I'm not saying that a study wouldn't be required, but I'm saying that it hasn't been asked for explicitly from the district. So our obligation is to have that conversation with the MECP, or our environmental consultant will be doing that. We have engaged with an environmental consultant to advise us on what needs to be done. So I suppose we'll be in touch with planning staff with our resolution to that.
I don't read it. I don't read it that way. It says the District of Muskoka has commented on the application and advised that a review of species occurrence data provided by the Natural Heritage Information Center confirm that the subject property may contain habitat of threatened or restricted species. I didn't think that was an option. I thought that was a request, a direct request.
Yeah, that was the first sentence of that paragraph, Councillor, and it says has confirmed that the property may contain habitat for restricted species. And I think it's safe to say that the entirety of the eastern shoreline of Georgian Bay may contain habitat for restricted species. So what they're saying to us here is, you know, we know that this whole area may contain habitat for restricted species, and it's the applicant's obligation to consult with the MECP to determine what an appropriate way forward is in terms of development mitigation strategies, et cetera. So the onus is on us now to communicate with the MECP.
Thank you. Councillor Wojcik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Joshua, for a very complete delegation here. My question is not to you, though, it's to Brad. Brad, I cannot find anywhere in our policies, and believe me, there's a lot to go through, so I may have missed it, where it is requested that an H be put on a property until a site plan is approved. Nowhere do I see that as a policy that it has to happen. So I'm wondering why you would entertain putting an H on this property until such a time that the site plan is approved, when no development can happen on this property until a site plan is approved. So what's the sense of putting the H on there? I think we as a township throw that H around all over the place for no apparent reason. Maybe you can enlighten me.
So through the mayor to Councillor Wojcik, within the waterfront designation, and specifically again within the Cognition community, it does state that all development shall proceed through or by site plan control. So in order to require that site plan control before any development occurs on the property, the hold is the way to kind of place a pause on it until they have the site plan agreement in place. And then once that piece is taken care of, then they can proceed with building permits after the hold has been lifted and that condition has been satisfied.
So this is something that's been a bone of contention, because in the official plan bylaws, to me, I read it as an H is to be placed on a property until such a time that a prudent survey is provided to show that there's enough land for development. That's what I read into this. And so again, my question is, why would you ask for an H to be inserted on this property when everything could happen without that H being put on there?
So there's different holds that can be applied. The H2 is the one that's applied to all vacant island properties that requires a plan of survey to confirm the lot area and the frontage and the location of the high water mark. We would be proposing a different holding symbol to be applied that would require the execution of a site plan agreement prior to getting building permits.
Okay, well, thank you for your explanation. I think holding people hostage with an H is wrong. I don't think there's a need for it here, but I have no problem with this application. I think everything as it was presented is fine, and I will vote to support it when the time comes, but I'll receive this report, and I thank everyone for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, I believe I saw your hand.
Yeah, there's been lots of discussion. I'm going to go back to the SAR that seems to be recommended, I guess, not necessarily needed. I think I think if we can build that into is that something we can require as part of the site plan agreement, Brad?
So through the mayor to Councillor Jarvis, absolutely. We can include a provision within the site plan control agreement to ensure that the applicant address and ensure that the Endangered Species Act is respected throughout the development of the property.
Or at least a consultation has been done with MECP. That would be something just to make sure that it's covered. It sounds like it's going to be anyway, but we should probably have it in writing. And I'm trying to remember, I had one other point. I'm happy to hear that we're only looking at one cabin on the site based on the size. I really am quite happy with. So yes, within the site plan that you provided to us, I don't see any envelope for the septic. Not that that's part of this discussion specifically, but I am curious where the septic is in relation to everything else on that property.
I could,
Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis, if I could share my screen again, I could just pop it up on pop the site plan up. Just bear with me here so you don't see my screen flip between slides here. So I don't actually believe that it's located, it's identified on the site plan, but I know where it is on the site, or pretty close anyway, having been there and taken pictures of it. So I'll just share my screen very briefly here. Okay, so my recollection is that the existing septic bed is somewhere in this location.
Thank you.
That's my recollection. I know that it's relatively close to the existing cottage, the converted sleeping cabin. It almost sits central between the two structures.
Yeah, it's almost, I wonder if it's the one originally set up for the original cottage, which burned down, which was in that little bay there to the southwest. I could be wrong. Anyway, it's not, I'm just curious, but thank you very much for that information.
You're welcome.
And yeah, I don't think I have any other question. I mean, I lament the loss of the old Van Crofter, which is the original cottage on that island. Sorry, I do have a question. Brad, do we have any previous applications or anything else that on the cabin was built, I think probably in 06, 07, after the Van Crofter burned down? Was there a formal application for that construction? And do we have record of it?
So through the mayor to Councillor Jarvis, I'm not aware of any recent Planning Act applications that have occurred on the property, but we will definitely look into that. And if there were any, we'll advise of that. But there's no, it just has a standard SRI 7 zone applied to it. So there wasn't any previous zoning bylaw amendments.
Yeah, that'd go back to what, 14, I guess, right? And this cabin was built, I suspect, Councillor Cooper may help me on this. I think 06 or 07. I'm not sure which, somewhere around there, because that's after the Van Crofter burned. And so, yeah, I'm just curious to know if there's any documentation with regards to any permitting on that cabin in the first place. That's all. Other than that, I'm very, very happy with the presentation and appreciate the detail that's been and the effort that's been put into this. Thank you.
I have one question, if I may, for Mr. Morgan, on the very detailed site plan that you have, or survey that you have. I do notice just, I'll say, northwest of where the master bedroom is going, there's something labeled septic lids. And I don't know if that is a deactivated septic area, or if that is, I mean, it's quite a distance from the existing cottage, if that is where the septic bed currently exists.
You've got a very keen eye. Yeah, there was a septic system up there. I don't know, just because I don't have the history on the property, I don't know if perhaps that's where the existing septic system was that serviced the cottage that burnt down, perhaps. But I know for a fact that where you see septic lids on the site plan, that is not the location of the current active septic system.
Yeah, I just find it very interesting that, you know, they're so thorough to list in the survey the old septic lids, but they failed to locate the new septic bed. But okay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, my recollection of the location of the existing septic system is that it was pretty overgrown with like long grass when I was there. And it may just have been that it wasn't readily visible to the surveyor. I'm not sure. I'm just speculating.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Wojcik, you had another question?
Yes, I agree. Very keen eye. I didn't pick up on that either. But I think, Brad, perhaps part of the site plan agreement should be an inspection to ensure that there was a decommission of any old septic on the property. It's very important that a septic tank or a septic bed that has been closed gets decommissioned before a new one. It probably didn't happen. So I would like to see a check mark on that one.
Absolutely. I've made note of that, Councillor Bloch.
Thank you.
We'll look into it.
Councillor Cooper.
Just a couple of quick comments and points. The location of the septic system is grandfathered, as I would understand here. Certainly not a 30-meter setback, and that is the standard that we do have. But it's grandfathered in its location, and it may be changed in terms of not location, but the size of the tank in order to accommodate what's being constructed here. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's quite close to the shoreline. I guess the other thing is that there's been some discussion here about the use of the word, or the use of the tool, holds versus site plans. And I'm just going to suggest to perhaps you, perhaps to our CAO and our Director of Planning, that it might be helpful to have our legal counsel comment on the differences between site plans versus holds, and the power of a hold and the legal strength of a hold versus a site plan, because it's my understanding they're quite different. And frankly, you have a lot more teeth with a hold versus a site plan agreement. So unless you create a bylaw that enforces that site plan agreement. So I don't know whether you want to comment on that, but I just think it would be helpful, given some of the discussion around site plans versus holds, for our planning council to understand those two distinctive areas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no more hands raised, I have moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that Development Service Report 2021-45 dated June 15th, 2021, with respect to the official plan amendment application O2101 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z2106 be received, and that staff be directed to consider the comments received for O21-01 and Z21-06 and prepare a recommendation report that will be brought back to a subsequent council meeting for consideration. All those in favor? Councillor Cooper, I don't think you're trying to vote twice there.
I'm suggesting an amendment to your resolution, which would be that it come back to council to proceed through a public meeting and then for passing, so that the public can comment on this. There are a lot of information that has not come in. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I'll be interested what our fellow councilors say. I'm not sure why a public meeting would be necessary unless there's a change that would asking for more than what is being asked for with this application. And I will also further add that the public is free to send in comments at any time between now and when we consider it. Councillor Bochek, followed by Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If Councillor Cooper is asking for an amendment to this resolution, I would be turning down this today. If a separate resolution to see if council is willing to have a second public meeting to do with this, then we would have the opportunity to give our opinions. But to include it with the same resolution as an amendment, I think would destroy the resolution and it wouldn't pass. And there's absolutely no need not to pass this because someone's asking for an amendment for a public meeting.
Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Bochek on that one. I don't think there's anything wrong with asking for a public meeting, but let's do it separately in a separate resolution. And I would agree with what your comments were, Mayor Coetzee. Unless an application is asking for more and not, in this case, it's less, I don't really see why we would need another one personally, but that's just my comment.
Councillor Jarvis.
sort of in agreement with both sides of this. I think the public portion of these types of things is very important. But having I note what you comment is your comments, Mr. Mayor, and that the public can always send in any comments they would have with regards to this. The application we're looking at does have a number of changes that are going to have to be made to it, namely the reduction in floor space either in the cabin or the existing cabin or the proposed new structure. We've had comments with regards to SAR, MECP, septic decommissioning. There are lots of little things in there that are cause for people maybe to take more notice with the application in general. And it does concern me that we would appear to be closing it off to public input, when in fact, obviously we're not, because they can write in. But in the interest of transparency, I don't see why we can't have our next meeting where we could possibly approve the application, but have it as a public discourse. So I'd be happy with an amendment to the resolution indicating that the following meeting would be open to public.
Thank you. Councillor Hazelton, followed by Councillor Rienko.
I'm observing that generally speaking, when applications come forward and we have a public meeting, that they are complete applications. And what we are learning today is this is not a complete application, and that there will be changes made when it comes back. And as Councillor Jarvis just indicated, there are several items that may need to be changed. And I think it would be reasonable and fair for the public to see the final version of this application and be permitted to comment on it in a public forum, which is what normally happens when final applications are brought forward in a public process. And I would encourage us to think of it that way and accept the amendment that has been recommended by Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Councillor Rienko.
Well, this is a public meeting today, and there's no members of public making comments today. All the comments were submitted by email or letter or whatever. So when this comes back, the same process, people can submit their comments by letter. But this is a public meeting today, and there's no public. So why would it be any different when we have the full story? I have a problem that way.
All right. We have a split council. I think we should pass, personally, I hope that we can pass this motion as is. And then if a councillor wants to put forward an additional motion to make it a public meeting, that we have another public meeting, if any changes are made to the application as it exists, we can vote on that second motion. I think to the clerk, I don't know if that's doable. Okay. So Councillor Bochek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if this is being used as a delay tactic or what, but when you have a public meeting, then there's a period and a process after that public meeting. This is only delaying things even further. So I can't see the reason. I can't see any reason for having a second public meeting when nobody showed up to the first public meeting, and we welcome the public's input by way of emails or letters or phone calls or anything. I don't see why we would delay this again after having another public meeting.
Well, there is always the option that we have exercised occasionally, that during a public meeting, we actually come to a final decision at the end of that public meeting, because we in other words, we don't have more information that we want to receive from our staff. So having another public meeting would not rule out the possibility of making our final decision on that day. What the public meeting really, all it really does, the only change it makes to the normal procedure, it would be allow somebody to actually speak to us during the meeting.
Okay, well, If you want to have a separate resolution so the council can vote whether or not they think that a second public meeting is needed, I'm fine with that. But if it's added as an amendment to this current resolution, I think we're making a great misjustice here to the applicant and to the planner.
Yeah, I mean, the current resolution doesn't say that we can't have a public meeting. It simply says that we want staff to come back to a future council meeting with recommendations. And so, Councillor Cooper.
I'm happy to have it as a separate resolution. I'm just simply saying that I think a fully completed application is appropriate for public transparency. And we do have a number of matters outstanding. So I'd like to see this go ahead today, but have a second resolution that the next meeting be a public meeting. I fully expect at that public meeting that if we have all the answers to the questions that we have today, that we would pass it. So I see no delaying tactic here whatsoever. That's certainly not my reason for raising this. It's about making sure that everything is there and the process is such that we are being fully transparent. So I'd be happy to have a second resolution.
Thank you. The current resolution moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved. You want me to read the whole thing again? I will read the whole thing. Be it resolved, the Development Service Report 2021-45 dated June 15th, 2021, with respect to the official plan amendment application 021-01 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z21-06 be received. And that staff be directed to consider the comments received for 021-01 and Z21-06 and prepare a recommendation report that will be brought back to a subsequent council meeting for consideration. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Now, Councillor Cooper, do you want to propose an amendment? Sorry, not amendment, an additional resolution?
Yeah, simply that when this particular application returns to council, that it comes as a public meeting so that all of the outstanding information is in front of the public and they have a chance to comment in a public, technical, public process. This isn't to delay, it isn't going to do anything, shouldn't do anything like that at all. It's simply, I'm talking about a process that I think would be more appropriate. In fact, we adopted doing this something similar to this recently. So anyway, the resolution would simply be that it come back as it's brought back to subsequent public meeting. Yes, that's it.
All right. Do you have a seconder for this motion?
I don't know. I have
see
two.
Both Jarvis and Hazelton's hands go up in the screen I had. So Councillor Hazelton will second this motion. Councillor Wojcik, you wish to speak to it?
My questions are to Brad, being that there's a proposed second public meeting and a hold and a site plan approval, all moving forward. And when I talked about delays, there is protocols and procedures when you have a public meeting that are not the same as when you have a standard meeting. So Brad, the question to you is, now you're going to have to reissue all notices to all people within so many miles or whatever, let them know all the application process, go over it all with them, wait for their comments to come in. I believe we've had a public meeting today, a public process today. We're taxing our only planner now to go out and circulate more notices and everything else. I'm not buying into this at all. Somebody else might buy into it, but I'm certainly not.
Mr. Oster, can you answer the question that was in there?
So through the mayor to Councillor Wojcik, yes, we would need to send out notice to all property owners within 800 meters. Because it was requested by council, we would not be charging the recirculation fee to the applicant in this case.
Okay, Councillor Douglas, followed by Councillor Yanko.
So just for clarification, because I think this was just, you already mentioned this, Mayor Coutier, in a subsequent meeting, a regular meeting on this particular file, we have made exceptions if a member of the public wishes to ask a question. The public also has opportunity to send in correspondence during the period of time without having a second public meeting. I don't think we're doing a disservice to our public by not creating more work for the planning department, more work to send out notifications. That is going to slow everything down. I think there is plenty of transparency here where the public can ask questions, and certainly if we are able to do this as a council, make an exception should a member of the public have a question on that next meeting. I don't see why we would ever go through the process of calling a public meeting. That's my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Yanko.
I agree with the comments from the last two councillors, but I would add that this is could be perceived as a bad precedent. If we allow this one, we're going to have to allow it again at the whim of any of the councillors. So I think this is a bad precedent. I think we should be following our procedures and policies that we have in the planning department. And if the planning department thinks that there's enough changes that it requires another public meeting, then they make the decision. But here we are undercutting again the planning department's prerogative. And I think this is a bad precedent to be establishing today.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
So I think that I certainly am not trying to create problems for our planning department. I am talking about process here. So what I would ask is that I'll bring forward a resolution to a future council meeting with respect to process. Is there any reason that we couldn't have a meeting like this why does it have to be public at this point when we don't have all that information that we're supposed to have? Why can't we have a information purposes meeting and then follow with a full public meeting once we have everything as a second phase? I'm confused why we do it the way we're doing it. But I have a response to that before I withdraw my motion.
Mr. Hauser, would you care to respond?
So through the mayor to Councillor Cooper, this is the process under the Planning Act. When the notice is given to applicable agencies, internal staff departments, members of the public, this is their opportunity to review any policies that they have in effect, any concerns that members of the public or any of these agencies or internal staff departments may have. They then provide those comments to staff, planning staff, who in turn provide them to the agent and say, hey, these are some of the other items that need to be looked at and addressed through your application. That application then goes to council for the public meeting. As no decision or no recommendation was provided by staff, the applicant can then address any of those comments that were provided on the application through subsequent submissions. And then the application would return to council at a later date with a recommendation if the proposal was the same. If the proposal was increased or any further relief was requested, then staff would have to give notice of a public meeting because what is being proposed was not previously circulated. But if the request is staying the same or is reduced, then a second public meeting is not required.
If I could just ask my fellow councillors who have seconded or tried to second this for their comments, I'd like to hear before I include this or withdraw this, but I'm still concerned about process. Thank you.
Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to all sides of this. I find at the moment I'm much in agreement with Councillors Bloch and Douglas and Wianco with regards to holding things up and making things more burdensome than they need to be. On the one hand, on the other, I'm in agreement with Councillor Cooper in that there is information that we do not have. I'm using a general term for the public meeting itself, the public process itself. And if we get answers to those questions, then it should be coming back within the same process that it was set up. In other words, if the public is unaware that we are meeting again to answer the requests and fulfill the requests that the planning and we have brought forward and the public's brought forward, they'd be missing something. I understand that the public can participate by bringing information to us after the fact and that we can review that information at our subsequent meeting. But unless people are notified, which is what we're talking about here with regards to the public process, there may be a gap and it may be a perception of a lack of transparency. I'd be happy to, if we withdrew this subsequent motion, I guess it's no big deal one way or the other. I don't want to tie things up with council. I don't want to make a big mess of additional work for the planning department. But I do want us to understand that in a sense, there's a lack of, there would be a perception of a lack of transparency, I guess the best way to put it, in my mind, by not allowing a proper announcement to the public for their participation in a subsequent meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Hazelton, do you want to add anything at the invitation of Councillor Cooper?
Yes. So my concern that I've already voiced is for transparency and due process. And my belief is and was that applications generally come forward when they're mostly complete. I have learned something today, and I thank Brad for offering that. And that is what he has explained to me, which has changed my mind a little bit, is if an application comes forward and it is seeking relief, and again, correct me if I'm wrong here, Brad, but if an application is coming forward and it's seeking relief, and there are other things that need to change in the application that do not seek any greater relief, but in fact perhaps have less relief, then from the planning perspective, there isn't a need for another public meeting. But if in the process of hearing this first round, the applicant comes back with an application that seeks more relief, then that triggers a new public process. Is that correct? Am I understanding it right? So if that is the case, then I'm okay with not having another public process, subject to our planning department telling us that more relief is being requested, and therefore it will automatically trigger a new public process.
Yeah, I want to make a couple observations here. One is this was a complete application. Suggestions that it was not complete are incorrect. But what has happened, the complete application was made and information has come in. That's the purpose of this whole thing. Information came in from people such as the building department that said, hey, wait a minute, your septic system isn't up to what you will need if you go ahead with the proposed building. What the applicant has said, because of what they learned from the building department, they may, we don't know yet for sure, they may reduce their application, or they may decide they need a new septic system. We don't know what they'll decide. But I object strongly to the suggestion that we're not being transparent. Well, excuse me, this application went out, the public were made aware of it, they've had a chance to comment, they'll be informed if when it comes back in front of us, they'll have a chance to comment there. We're not hiding anything. So I think we have to be a little careful in the suggestions that A, the application wasn't complete, or B, we're not being transparent. C, I think we're adding a level of redundancy, expensive redundancy, by asking people to put out a second notice, going through a public meeting a second time, when they've already had a chance to comment, and as been made very clear, not only today, but in prior meetings, that unless they require further relief, we don't have to go to public. And if nobody had an objection to the existing cottage being a sleeping cabin, why would they have an objection to the existing cottage being smaller and still being a sleeping cabin? Anyway, Ms. Lemieux, I'm suspecting you would like to add a comment.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to add in for council's note here, the planning committee has been tasked with reviewing the policies in the official plan regarding public meeting notifications and the process as a whole. And I think that would probably be the most appropriate time for Councillor Cooper's suggestions to come up in a wholesome discussion with the committee. And obviously there's members of council who are on that committee who will be able to bring those concerns forward when that item is discussed, because I do believe that what Councillor Cooper is speaking to would obviously require some amendments to the official plan. But I did just wanted to clarify that that has already been tasked to the committee. So hopefully that is something that will be looked at and discussed by the end of the year. So I just wanted to add that in for assistance here. Thanks.
Okay, I would like to call Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Just very quickly. Thank you, Mayor Coetzee, for your comments, because I was going to mirror that, but I don't need to do now. But I also just want to make it people aware, the council has been made aware that everyone who submitted any letters of notification on this particular matter will be notified when the matter returns. So they will have that information as to when it's returning.
All right, shall I call the vote? Councillor Cooper.
I don't see why we're voting on this. I'm willing to withdraw this particular resolution, especially given the explanation from Director Lemieux that it's going to the planning committee for review and understanding. Obviously, it's been raised before, and you know, whether we like it or not, there's a number of considerations, including legal considerations, that we're not lawyers here. Let's get some feedback on the legal side of this as well, because I think that there may be some justification to changing the order of how we do things as opposed to anything else. And to suggest that I'm not suggesting that our township isn't transparent per se. I was concerned about the order in which we're doing things here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, the motion has been withdrawn. And so now I would like us to go to the second part of our public meeting held under the authority of the Planning Act, and that's with regards to the zoning bylaw amendment application Z20-19 to Ms. Lemieux.
Good morning, everybody. So let me just share my screen here. Can I get a thumbs up, Councillor Jarvis? You're the only one I can see. Thank you.
Now we can see your screen.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody. The next public meeting application is in regards to 475 and 483 High Street in MacTier. So this application is for council to consider passing a temporary use bylaw to permit a seasonal mobile eating establishment or food truck that I'm going to more simply refer it to through this presentation. So here we have the location of the subject lands. As you can see, the properties are located just off of High Street within MacTier. So of course, central to the community. Just to the north, we have the Muskoka General Store, and the grocery store is along French Street there as well. So again, in the central location of MacTier. So here we have a zoomed in version with the aerial imagery. So of course, as typical, the boundary lines that you see here are obviously not exact on our CGIS mapping, but you can understand the general location of the property boundaries here. So it is important to note that both of these properties are township owned properties. So the application here is to essentially allow for the seasonal eating establishment to occur on these lands. So the current policy framework for both the properties within the PPS, they are considered a settlement area because they're located in MacTier. In the district official plan, they're considered urban center. In the township official plan, the MacTier Urban Center residential. And then in the zoning bylaw, the most southern portion, 475 High Street, has R4 residential zoning, with the property to the north actually has institutional zoning. So just to clarify on the map. So this parcel here has the residential zoning and this parcel here has the institutional zoning. So essentially the purpose and effect of the application in front of you today is to permit the use of a seasonal mobile eating establishment for a maximum of 3 years on the subject lands in accordance with Section 39 of the Planning Act. So the effect of the application will essentially rezone both parcels of land to a temporary use exception, which will allow for that use to maintain for 3 years on the subject lands in accordance with the existing food truck policies that we do have in place. And that is that they're only allowed to operate between, I believe it is the Victoria long weekend to Thanksgiving. So here is a general site plan that was submitted, and of course, details of the actual truck to be established, parking, et cetera, will be established through the building permit and license process with bylaw and building. But just a general idea of what the applicant is proposing. You know, basic food trailer that we're all accustomed to seeing with picnic tables, as well as it has been determined, and I have been on site myself many times and I'm familiar with the area. And Councillor Douglas may be able to assist as well with some context, but there is quite a number of parking opportunity along Front Street, as well as the streets surrounding. And it is important to note that I believe the majority of people going to be using this facility during the summer months likely will be, you know, walking up from the beach, you know, the local residents. So staff do not have any issues with the parking for it here. So public comments, we did not receive any letters of objection or letters of support from the public, and the District of Muskoka noted no concerns. So overall, the planning comments from the Development Services report states that council does have the power under the Planning Act to pass the proposed temporary use bylaw. It is the opinion of planning staff that the proposed use can be accommodated on the subject lands, given the surrounding parking areas, as well as the understanding that the customers would be the majority pedestrians within the community. The proposed temporary use would provide an additional food and beverage resource to the MacTier community and tourists during the summer months. And it is located directly adjacent to lands that are already zoned to permit food trucks. However, those lands do not provide the physical capacity or ownership opportunities. So therefore, this is a great opportunity for lands that are currently underutilized to have such a use on them. Planning staff also believe that this temporary use bylaw to allow for this use will also not restrict any future potential development growth on the property to see it built out to its full anticipated use as per contemplated in the official plan. So essentially the 3 years will allow the food truck, any future expansion for the Georgian Bay store or any other type of new land use that may go into that area. This will not stop that from happening, but in the meantime, allow for some better use of the property. It is required that the food truck obtain all necessary permits from both bylaw and building departments to ensure that the appropriate health and safety measures are in place related to the erection of the structure, food safety, maintenance, et cetera, and all those costs are to be burdened on the operator of the food truck. So planning staff have no concerns with the proposed temporary use bylaw for the subject lands. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clerk Way, I see that there are one letter of objection from, sorry, no objection from District of Muskoka. Did you receive any other correspondence?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. The applicant I see is here. Michelle, did you want to make any additional comments?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I just had a question. What is the temporary about? What is going to happen after the 3 years?
Through your worship to the applicant. So at that time, Michelle, you would have to reapply to either end the temporary use or make it permanent. But based on the current policies and zoning of the lands, the temporary use was the only way for township staff to support it at the time.
Okay, I see. So it's just the process, the way it works. Start with 3 years. Okay. Is there a possibility to make it permanent in the future then?
So through your worship to the applicant, it is difficult to to make any assumptions at this point. To foresee what may happen with the subject lands or any changes to any policy or zoning, it is hard to say. But again, at that time, reaching out to your local council would probably be the best route forward to see if they have any insight on what they foresee the community valuing at that time.
Okay. All right. I had one more other question. So next door to my house, my plan is to tie, like, this is an ideal spot for me. It's been quite the go the last 3 years trying to find a spot every summer for it. So next door to my lot, the one that I'm rezoning, it's an old tile bed, I believe. It's a big hump. So I was looking into, like, my ex-husband as an excavator, how I would go through the process to have that removed, level out, equal with Muskoka Station Store and my house property, like it equal it out to the whole property, make it all level one lot. Yeah, so that's what how would I go about doing that? What's my next steps with that?
So through your worship to the applicant. So this application, Michelle, is just for the use to be allowed on the property.
Okay.
When it comes to potentially having to do any type of, minor leveling out of any sort to establish the truck on there, that would be best suited questions for the building department, but they will review all of that before you get the permit to erect the truck anyways.
Okay.
Also, we did extend the application to also cover the adjacent additional lot, the institutional lot, to allow you more room. So you don't necessarily have to do any substantial site alteration.
Okay.
You will be able to situate that better, but township staff will assist you through that process.
Okay. So the building department is who okay, that's who I'm eventually going to be speaking with about leveling the lot out to make it one big, flat level lot. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Do just any time frame process for all of this to be finalized? Do you know? Like, I have no idea how this works, and I'm just so late in the summer once again. I didn't even get to open until August, 2 summers ago, but I still made the best of it. Yeah, so I have a couple people that are willing to help me out run it. So I just kind of be nice to know sort of like when this would be complete.
So through your worship, so if council so chooses to support the temporary use bylaw today, Michelle, there is a 20-day appeal period as per the Planning Act, but you can get into contact with the building department within that 20 days. It's just structures can be erected during that time to allow for any potential appeals.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I don't think I see any members of the public who want to make any comment. I have seen Councilors Douglas and Wienko's hands already. So Councilor Douglas, do you want to lead off, followed by Councilor Wienko?
Sure. Thank you. And I think having another option for a food truck in MacTier is a great idea. We lost the one there was a purpose change, I believe, in the grocery store, which used to be quite well attended. So yeah, I have no problem with this application. I think it'll be a good addition to MacTier, and I do believe we do have enough parking as our director indicated.
Thank you. Councilor Wienko.
And I too support this application, and I know you, Mr. Mayor, you don't like to get off topic on this, but I was under the impression that we looked at all our township property years ago and got rid of all the properties that we had. Why are we still retaining these 2 properties? I thought we were in the business of trying to get rid of our properties. Why are we still retaining these 2 properties? This is the first I've known about this.
I'll take them.
Well, okay, we already have an offer. Okay. Ms. CEO Gunby.
Thank you, Your Worship. I can answer that because I was a staff person sort of in charge of that years ago when we did it. We had about 13 properties declared surplus, and I think we managed to sell about 2 or 3. So they're not really in high demand, apparently.
So these properties are presently for sale?
No, I don't know if these ones were actually ever declared surplus. I did bring forward a long list. Council sort of did a little pick and choose of which ones to declare. I'm not sure if these ones were declared, but I can verify that for you.
Well, maybe we should bring it back to council at some point. I don't know if anybody else has any comments, but I think this is prime land, so we could probably sell this in Mactier.
All right, I think that's, as you say, that was a bit off topic, but I think Ms. Gunby will take that as direction. Councillor Wojcik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by saying I'm in full support of the application. Mactier is a community that services a lot of cottagers and a lot of people from the surrounding area. And we lost a great little fast food restaurant there across from the food town due to fire. The restaurant burnt down, and there really is no place in Mactier anymore just to grab fries. And I mean, you don't get a body like this from eating tofu. We like fry trucks, right? So I have no issues whatsoever with this application. I think it's great for the community as well, too.
I'm seeing no other hands raised. So what I have in front of me is moved by Councillor Hazelton, seconded by Councillor Jarvis. Be it resolved that Development Service Report 2021-46 dated June 15th, 2021, with respect to zoning bylaw amendment application Z20-19 be received. And the council enact bylaw 2021-035 to rezone the subject lands to residential type 4 temporary use exception 1 and institutional temporary use exception 1 to permit the temporary use of a seasonal mobile eating establishment on the lands located at 475 and 483 High Street. All those in, oh, Ms. Lemieux, you're not allowed to vote.
I know, I wish I could sometimes, but I actually just noticed that a member, one of our attendees, Debbie, has raised her hands. They may be wanting to speak to the application.
Okay.
I apologize. I just noticed that it's a, would you like me to let her in?
Yes, well, this is a public meeting.
Correct. Just promoting her now. Just want to make sure that we don't miss any comments.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, hi. I'm just thinking about a food truck in a residential area. I don't believe it would be.
We can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Very faintly.
Okay, let me try.
Ms. Wade, do you have the full name of Debbie?
Now?
Barely.
Oh, barely.
Oh, now it's better.
Oh, cool. Just concerned with putting a food truck in a residential area. I'm concerned about public safety. What about propane tanks? And traffic. I don't know if anybody's looked at the traffic. I know you're thinking that a lot of it's going to come from the beach. Well, in Mactier, it's so busy. I'm not sure about parking. I think it could be a hazard. And I wondered if it was all reviewed and looked at.
Sorry, Debbie, can I just have you state your last name for the record, please? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Gettlife.
Okay, thank you.
I know Jessica lives next door. She's not the property owner of the place. And I'm not sure if the property owner was also notified.
Yes, she was. I am in the process possibly of buying the house, actually.
But anyway, council is what I'm speaking to right now. And I'm just wondering if those, if you have reviewed that and took into consideration the traffic, like traffic in Mactier, it's crazy in the summer. And it is a residential area.
Ms. Lemieux.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to share my screen again just to provide some further context to both council and the resident. So hopefully you can see the aerial image now on the screen. So I just wanted to point out that I absolutely understand the concerns that were raised. It is important to note that essentially all of the properties that you can see here on the screen,
You don't want it right there.
all the properties along front on both sides, as well as the Muskoka store, all of them currently are commercial zoned. So all of those properties currently can already have a food truck as is. They just need to get the license through bylaw. It is kind of unfortunate, as Councillor Winkle pointed out, that these lands have kind of been a little lost in the way. And the reason for staff support of the application is essentially that, really a couple feet, further up, they would be allowed to put a food truck there tomorrow, so long as they got the appropriate license and got their health certificate from the health unit. So essentially it's just, this is vacant land right adjacent to the commercial strip. And we believe that though it is considered residential in the official plan and the zoning bylaw right now, functionally, it does not function that way, and it is township owned land. So therefore, it is not anticipated, unless a private landowner were to come and buy it from the township, that it will ever actually become residential. So just wanted to provide that clarification that we did take those comments into consideration of, what will this do to traffic? But, a food truck could go into any of these other properties tomorrow. It's my understanding that none will, because they don't really have the space, or none of those owners anticipate putting anything on their property. So just to provide the residents some further context there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your comments.
You don't want the food truck.
Councillor
Could I
Rieko.
speak? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. I don't know how to raise my hand.
Michelle, go ahead, and then Councillor Rieko.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to add, it's more than just fries as well. And I was extremely busy. I even had gentlemen in suits and people coming from Port Carling just saying the words flying over there. It brought in a lot of business, as well as getting to know tourists as well. But I also have Philly cheesesteak, homemade burgers, chicken fingers, poutine. I did crab salad and croissant. I had a very large menu coming out of that little 8x12 trailer. Just wanted to add that. It was extremely busy. A lot of people just stopping and saying, I'm not ordering food. I just want to let you know your food was amazing. Yeah, so,
Excellent.
yeah, just want to make note of that. And not just fries, a lot more than that.
And I hope Councillor Wojcik remembers that. Councillor Rieko.
In the diagram that Michelle provided, it showed that the trailer and the parking and so on was on one of the lots. And yet our resolution talks about providing her both lots. And so I guess that'll increase the parking, because now there's two lots. So it is two lots that we're providing, not just one lot?
Through your worship, that is correct. And the reason why, and the other reason why staff is suggesting both lots, because they are both township owned. This will allow that even if it may not be Michelle next year, another food truck, establishment could come in and use that property. And it does make sense to use both lots functionally together versus just the one strip. They're both township owned. They're both underutilized, as all of council understands. So that was the intent. So you are correct, Councillor Renko, that it will be, both lots will be open for parking and picnic tables, etc.
Okay. Do I need to read the resolution one more time, or should I call the vote? All those in favor?
Oh, they're all going to vote for it.
That is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your input. That ends our public meeting, and I'm going to suggest we take a 15-minute break and reconvene at 11:30. Thank you very much. Well, it's 11:30. Hopefully those who have not shown up can hear me and we'll get to their camera. Look at that, just like that, a couple people appear. All right. I think it's now 11:30 and I think we should get this meeting back on the road. In section 7 of our agenda, we have 3 items, public planning applications not subject to a public meeting. So and the first one is in regard to the renaming of a road, and Mr. Oster, I believe you will be presenting that report.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Just gonna bring up the presentation here. Make sure everybody can see the slide. Perfect. All right, so this report is just in response to a request from the Road Association to rename a private road. It is currently known as North-South Road, and they are proposing to rename the road to Minnow Bay Road. So here we have just a road location map showing the general location of the subject property. So it is located here in red and provides access to shoreline residential and shoreline properties along the North Bay of Georgian Bay. So the Road Association did advise staff that they have been experiencing issues just due to the name of the road. It was pretty similar to North Shore Road. So they are proposing to rename the road to Minnow Bay Road just to try and eliminate any further confusions with the road name. The District of Muskoka has reviewed the proposed road name and they advise that they do not have any concerns with it. And township staff departments have also reviewed the road name and have advised no concerns. So staff are recommending that the proposed road name be adopted by council, and that's all I have.
Now I'm unmuted. That seemed quite straightforward. Thank you. I don't believe we have anybody, any members of the public or from the organization or the association that want to speak to this at this point, Ms. Way?
There is nobody in attendance for this item.
All right. Council, any thoughts on renaming North-South Road to Minnow Bay Road? Councilor Jarvis.
I guess we couldn't just rename it South North Road, could we? Just curious.
It's their application, not ours.
So this is a planning department application?
So
the origin of sorry, I'm trying to get to the root of the origin of the name Minnow Bay and whether that's going to be after we've renamed it. Somebody's going to go, well, no, we want it to be named this or yada, yada, yada. Obviously, I have no objections to renaming this road Minnow Bay. There's a road association. Okay, fine. Never mind. Got it. I thought I'd read it at somewhere. I just had to find it again. Thank you. Answer my own question.
Well done, young man. Any other comments? Councilor Bochek.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question to Brad. Brad, being that this has come through as an application to the planning department, would it be the planning department's responsibility to contact the provincial, federal, and other agencies to allow mapping to change? I mean, if you go to Google Maps now, it probably says North-South Road, but that's going to have to be changed. So is that why they've come to planning, so that you can notify everybody?
So through the mayor to Councilor Bochek, the District of Muskoka actually handles all of the 911 addressing across the entire district.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So they would, if council chooses to pass the bylaw renaming the road, we would provide a copy of that to the district. They would update their system, and then all of those external agencies would receive notice of the change as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Councilor Douglas.
So my understanding with this, unless I read something that came through, that this road was never intended to be that name. the owners of that property, the Middleton property. Am I on the right one here?
You're not.
Oh, you're on North Bay. Sorry, it's not the
We're
same.
on
road?
North-South Road / potentially Minnow Bay Road.
Yeah, okay,
7A.
sorry. Yep, sorry. I'm thinking about a different email that I got on, okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's a whole different situation.
Yep, thank you.
Any other comments? All right, what I have in front of me, moved by Councilor Wienko, seconded by Councilor Bocheck. Be it resolved that Development Service Report 2021-36 dated June 15th, 2021, with respect to the naming of one private road be received. And that Council passed bylaw 2021-036, naming the private road Minnow Bay Road. And that bylaw 2006-05 be repealed. And that the road association be responsible for all costs associated with installing appropriate signage. All those in favor? And that is carried. We now have a Minnow Bay Road in our township. Our next one is regards to Oak Bay Development's Block 14 Waterside application. And I believe that's Ms. Lemieux.
Thank you. Just going to give a brief PowerPoint to refresh everybody. From, I believe it was 2 months ago, the public meeting was in front of council regarding this application. So again, we're dealing with Block 14, which is commonly referred to as Waterside, the Waterside phase in Oak Bay Developments. So again, subject lands here, you can see outlined in orange is the Waterside phase. And here we have an aerial image of the phase of development. So again, the policy framework for this phase of the development, within the PPS, it's considered a settlement area, district official plan, urban center due to Port Severn, township official plan, residential within the Port Severn urban center, and within the zoning bylaw, it is currently zoned multiple residential type 4, exception 3 hold. So again, the purpose and effect of this application is essentially to reduce the maximum number of dwelling units within this phase down to 29 from 50 in the form of all single detached dwellings, whereas before there was a portion of units that were slotted out to be more of a villa style, like in some of the previous phases of Oak Bay, as well as to add some wording clarification regarding setbacks, to note that the entire condominium block will be considered as one lot. Again, that clarification is just put in there to allow for better ease when we are issuing building permits for the development once it comes back to the township. So here again is the screenshot from the current zoning bylaw table regarding Oak Bay. So as you can see here, essentially this application would modify the total number of single detached units in the block to 29 and the total to 29 as well. An overview of the concept plan that has been submitted by the applicant and their agent. And again, just to reiterate, so at the previous meeting, we had already heard from the District of Muskoka, who are not opposed to the approval of the application, provided that there is a holding provision maintained, which through this application, there would be the hold maintained to ensure, of course, water and sewage treatment capacity is sufficient, and that the proper district agreements are in place before the hold is lifted. So that comment has been dealt with appropriately through this application. Severn Sound Environmental Association reviewed the application as well and commented that no additional notices, letters, or requirements from the township risk management official, i.e. the SSCA, are required moving forward. And since the public meeting, we did obtain one letter of objection that was received by a member of the public, which I believe that letter was circulated to members of council yesterday via email. I believe it was yesterday. So the Development Services Report 2021-47 noted that the applicant is proposing to revise a previously approved portion of the Oak Bay development by modifying and reducing the total number of dwelling units within this phase. This request is based on current housing markets an increase in demand for single detached dwellings versus multiple unit villa structures. It is reasonable for these types of modifications to be made to a master planned community after a certain amount of time goes on that housing markets and demands have changed. The subject lands are subject to site plan control. Through this process, township staff will be able to ensure that appropriate and orderly development of the lands that include items such as landscaping, parking, servicing, and construction mitigation are in place. Planning staff are supportive of the application as submitted. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Again, this is not a public meeting, but Romus and their agent, Celeste Phillips, their planner, are on hand for any questions you may have for them as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Rienko, go ahead, please.
I have a couple of issues. The first, you mentioned that there was one letter of objection. There was a number of reasons why that individual submitted a letter. Can you address the various concerns they had?
Through your worship, yes, I have the letter in front of me here. I'd rather read it out loud instead of trying to paraphrase someone else's comments. If council's okay with me quickly reading it aloud. This, let me just see here, from a Mr. Miller is who sent it in. They state that I have presented several written objections and suggestions regarding Oak Bay development. Council will be voting on the latest approval this coming week. When I talked to Councillor Paul, he asked me to send an email that can be shared with council prior to the meeting. I have three concerns. One, Oak Bay developer has a history of restricting traffic flow and or blocking Golf Course Road during projects. I see no plan or anything new to address this for the new phase, which potentially limits fire trucks, ambulance, garbage truck access to my property at 123 Twin Island Trail and those of my mother and cousin. We have had several examples over the past year where garbage trucks were unable to gain passage to our location. Number two, safety of pedestrians. It is unusual now to traverse Golf Course Road without having to take special action to avoid walkers and dogs blocking one of the 1.5 lanes of live traffic. The solution of adding proper sidewalks and walking trails should be part of this next construction phase. Number three, an independent review and update of the biological survey and stormwater system is long overdue. These conditions can easily be added to the developer's list of conditions to begin more development. I know I am not a lone wolf on these issues, as I have spoken to many residents of the Oak Bay development and other neighbors who share these concerns. Please enact decisions to protect the community for the long term as developers leave town and the burden falls to the taxpayers like myself. Regards. So that's the comments in whole. From a staff perspective, I do note and understand the comments that have been made. The first comment about traffic flow and fire truck, garbage truck, all those concerns, those are definitely items that will be addressed through the site plan agreement process, which council does have the approval authority for. So council will be able to provide suggestions and make sure that you are satisfied that all these items that members of the public are concerned with are addressed before you pass that site plan agreement, including the safety of pedestrians. The owner and their agent may be able to comment, but I do believe there has been discussions about a potential sidewalk of some sort being potentially built along that area. But again, if they can provide clarification, that would be great because I don't want to misspeak. And regarding the review and update of the biological survey and stormwater system, again, Ms. Phillips might be best suited to comment on this, but I do believe that the applicant's ecologist is required to submit updated items regarding all the biological work to be done and monitoring that happens on the existing environmental features on the site. When it comes to stormwater systems, that's a bit over my head when it comes to servicing, but again, Ms. Phillips might be able to provide clarification on any updated items that council can expect with the later phases of the development.
What was Ms. was Ms. Phillips provided with a copy of this letter?
I do not believe I had sent it to her in time for the meeting. I apologize, Ms. Phillips.
Ms. Phillips, perhaps you could respond quickly to these concerns.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. With respect to the construction concerns, council may be aware that there has been upset amongst the existing residents about traffic and construction activity on the site, and that is because the project is under construction. But to alleviate that concern, Oak Bay has retained or hired an individual, and I think sometimes there's two individuals who manage the traffic on the property. So those are employees of Oak Bay who are at one end of the site and the other end of the site to ensure safety of the community, particularly those that are out walking on the streets, and to make sure there's not conflict with construction vehicles. Secondly, regarding the environmental impact study, and I think I might have mentioned this at the time of the public meeting, the environmental impact study was done by Beacon Environmental. And as part of their process and their agreement with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, they're required to monitor the site and report to MNRF on an annual basis. And they have consistently done that. In addition to that, Beacon attends at the site early in the construction year and provides a training session with construction workers so that they know to be looking out for the eastern hog no snake, as an example. But the environmental report was completed. It's not that it has a shelf life. The features are still there, but we have the added benefit in this case that the monitoring is taking place on an annual basis, which you don't often see in developments such as this. And I haven't seen the correspondence, so I'm not able to comment specifically about the other items regarding stormwater management and sidewalks, but I do agree with Director Lemieux that this is a property that is subject to site plan control. And so you will have the opportunity at that time to comment on that. And I just, one last point, Mr. Mayor, is to remind you that this is a plan of condominium that was approved already. So what we're asking for is a revision to the approved plan of condominium to reduce the number of lots. So we're already dealing with an approved project. Thank you.
Fully respect that, but I think it's important that we respond to the public with their concerns. And I know I brought up the subject of a sidewalk along Golf Course Road in the past as council, because the safety of everyone who lives on or near your development, of course, is of primary importance.
Right, and I'll certainly discuss that further with both my clients and with the project engineer. And once I've had an opportunity to review the correspondence, I can respond back to you that way.
Thank you. Councilor Rienko, follow up?
Yeah, just and the other issue I want to talk about, and I hate to be a broken record, but Victoria, the last time we talked about this a couple of months ago, we were still talking about the alternative entrance to the Oak Bay at the golf course there, and you indicated that there was some kind of report coming to us. Can you maybe give us an update on that?
Through your worship to Councillor Rienko, yes, you are correct. So it's my understanding that the district still has not completed the tri-party study. I believe that's the term, if Celeste can nod her head, yes. The tri-party study that is going to review the potential impact of the secondary entrance from Honey Harbor Road. Once that has been done, there will be something brought forward to this council about that as well. The overall subdivision plan does require a renewal, which the district has provided, I believe, on a monthly basis to the applicants at this time until the full spectrum has been completed. And, you know, hopefully staff in the next couple of months are able to bring that forward to this council for their input and support for the extension of the overall subdivision, where at that time, Councillor Rienko, I do believe that's when that information about that tri-party study will likely come to a head at the same time. But Ms. Phillips may have some additional comments about that as well.
Councillor Wienko, that is correct. There is a tri-party agreement between MTO, the district, and the township that's looking at the intersection. There was a delay in that study because the traffic numbers are much different during COVID than they would be pre-pandemic in terms of traffic exiting at that intersection. So that work is continuing on. I actually applied to the District of Muskoka on Oak Bay's behalf for an extension of draft approval on August 20th of 2020. And because of COVID and staff not always being in the office, that extension request is now being looked at, but for some time has sat in limbo with monthly extensions being granted. But I did correspond with the district planner as recently as yesterday, and I do know that they're now looking at that request for an extension of the overall draft plan of subdivision status.
Thank you. Councillor Jarvis, followed by Councillor Bocheck, followed by Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I don't think it was within the correspondence we just talked about, but another piece of correspondence, there was a concern that by reducing the number of units in this block, it would give Oak Bay the possibility of increasing density somewhere else in another block. Is that in fact the case, or is that not the case? Every block is treated separately.
Ms. Lemieux.
So through your worship to Councillor Jarvis, yes, thank you for bringing that up. So that was also a previous comment that was made at the public meeting. I believe it was verbally given. So as the overall subdivision plan, it's my understanding that there may be some modifications being requested by the applicants about any future phases and potentially some unit count changes that may happen then. Unfortunately, without that specific information in front of council today, through a specific application, it's hard for us as staff to comment on that or the impact of that. With this specific case, they are reducing the unit count. So will that probably have an impact on future phases? Yes, but that is definitely something that if that does occur, both the district and the township will absolutely have to take that into consideration and review and ask for potentially any updates to studies or anything of the like to make sure that that density is appropriate for the area. Again,
it's not an automatic though, correct?
Correct. It's that table that I noted. Currently, that's the amount of units that are permitted. But again, you may see some changes in the future. Again, based on housing and market demand. And again, Ms. Phillips can probably relay that further. But I unfortunately right now, really the only thing that's in front of council is a reduction in units. Right. So it's hard for us to comment further.
No, that's fine. Just want to understand that. I have one other further question, if that's all right, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
The other one was Ms. Phillips mentioned a environmental report going from Beacon to the MNRF or whoever on a regular annual basis. I realize that this is not exactly part of this request here, but
it will be very brief.
Then it'll be very, very. Is there any way we can have it arranged that a copy of that report can be made to our municipality as well, so we could see it? It's an ask.
I think so. So I will speak with the environmental consultant about when the next report is going to MNRF, and I'll speak with my clients, and I'll respond in the same response regarding the correspondence received today.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Bocheck.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Celeste and Romus, for attending this meeting. I have basically two different questions here, and they both come out of the history behind the project. And the first part is the letter that we received from Mr. Miller. Now, my understanding is Mr. Miller does not live at Oak Bay or in the Oak Bay development. He lives on Twin Island Trail, which access to that private road comes off of Golf Course Road. So I do understand his concerns that he would have to get down Golf Course Road to get to his road to get to his house, which is not part of the subdivision. So the traffic being that you have big float trailers and excavators and everything coming in to do the development, I think it's imperative that you use your safety crews and your people that are in place to make sure that that road stays open for all services at all time. But the comments about sidewalks and that, once I received that letter, I took a drive over to Oak Bay and spoke to many residents in Oak Bay and on Clap Trail and on Twin Island Trail. And they weren't as passionate about sidewalks and things like that. They like the country lane, the country road, the ability to not look like Scarborough or Markham. They're quite happy with the way things are. So I would remind council that this is one letter from one person, and we didn't get a multitude of letters from anyone else. So his concerns, being well noted, may only be the concerns of a very small minority. Second part of this question is, I'm confused as the local councillor on this second entrance. And I think Councillor Wianco is a bit confused too, because in the initial site plan agreement with the plan of subdivision, that second entrance was going to be reviewed and open after or before a certain phase of the development was to continue. In that time frame, your phases, the number of your phase changed. So whereas, say, it was supposed to review that road being open before phase 3 started, the number of phase 3 changed and you went on and developed another area. So really it was the third phase, and the road didn't get addressed because we've moved the numbers of the phase around. You moved to a different phase. So maybe I could get some clarity on that, because I am getting a lot of questions from my constituents about that, and I don't have an answer. So Victoria, I'm sure you have a great handle on this, and as well as Celeste. So I'd just like to get some clarity, so I have something to offer the people with questions.
Yes, I could answer that, Councillor Bloch. I'm wondering if I might be able to share my screen to show the master plan.
If you, oh, there we go. Perfect. I was going to say, if you want to try, great.
Okay. So just for orientation, this is Honey Harbor Road. This is Golf Course Road coming in. At the top here is the area that you're referring to, Councillor Bloch.
Yes.
So, so what's developed is Links Trails is now developed. Woodland, as you know, the singles have been there for quite some time, and council approved relocating the roadway through the center to allow marina townhouses on either side, and those are under construction now. So they're all in the first phases. So the next step was that council approved, at the same time as they approved the marina townhouse 52 units here, they also approved the 173 units in Summerside. This is condo townhouses as well. And the way that the draft approval condition reads is that after the completion of Summerside and before the other developments can go ahead, that secondary access egress needs to be resolved. And just going back in history, for some time that couldn't be resolved because there was a trailer located on that property belonging to the development to the east. So there is actually a temporary access egress there now for emergency purposes, and it is a gated access. But there has been certainly reference by your fellow council members about making that a permanent access egress into the development. The concerns that I have as a planner, and are also expressed by the traffic engineer, is that a new access here may actually increase the amount of cut-through traffic that goes through Links Trail to make its way down through this area. So there is already a widened entrance coming into the development here. So there's no concerns about this being blocked and emergency vehicles not being able to access the property. But the issue really is that the traffic reports have demonstrated that this emergency access egress is never needed from a traffic perspective, even on full build out. And further to that, we're concerned about the cut through traffic. And then the last point is, as part of the tri-party agreement with MTO and the district on the looking at the interchange, MTO has indicated that they're satisfied with the temporary or sort of emergency gated exit that exists currently. So a long-winded answer, Councillor Bochek, but the simple answer to your question is that that is to be further looked at following the development of Summerside.
All right, thank you.
Yes, thank you for the clarity on that, Celeste. And I did have one other comment, but I'm going to leave it alone for now because I don't have the facts. It's simply a comment from a resident, and I'm not sure that it's correct. So I'll hold off on that. If I need to, I'll contact you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper, I believe I had you next in line.
Really, yes, thank you, Mayor. And just a question for you. I thought I saw a copy of a letter from the executive director of the Georgian Bay Land Trust, which was sent to you.
You being me?
No.
No, which you? Which you?
You, Peter Kutzier, Mayor. I see a letter that was sent to you yesterday. No, yeah, I think yesterday or Saturday.
In regard to this development?
Correct.
Yes, I recall that letter as well.
Well, you might have me at an advantage.
Well, not trying to do that, just that I thought there was more correspondence. So I just wanted to raise they were concerned that they weren't notified about the latest developments in Oak Bay and hadn't seen anything for quite some time, including related to the last meeting we had and this meeting. So as an adjacent property owner, I'm curious as to why that happened.
I'm having difficulty locating that correspondence.
So came in on Sunday at 1:10 to 2. Oh, you know what? I see why. Somebody thinks you still work at Albury.
Oh, well, no, they don't forward emails to me.
That's why you don't have it. Anyway, there's a question about notification and from the Georgian Bay Land Trust, which was my first sort of question. What sort of process did we go through? I guess we had a previous meeting and then this meeting. What are we doing with adjacent property owners, if anything? I guess that's to you, Victoria, if you don't mind.
Through your worship, yes. I'm actually just trying to look right now in our system to see the notification list. If you give me a moment, I can provide some clarity in a second here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, for those who don't know, the land trust has some property and a modus bird tower close to where the marinas towns are being built.
Victoria, while you're doing that, if I could ask a question of Celeste, if you don't mind, just to keep the ball bouncing. So sort of related to this information that was being referenced by Beacon Environmental. I mean, essentially, when we look at this application over time, we have a survey that was environmental survey or whatever the right term, a report was done in, I think, 2007. The original site visits were in 2005. And you're saying there's an update being done every year since then. I think it really would be most useful if the public was aware of that, and they're not, to the best of my knowledge. And so I would strongly recommend that the township be provided with that information and that our website contain that information on an annual basis so that people gain some comfort in the fact that there's, sort of ongoing environmental reporting and oversight. Do you have any comment about that?
Yes, understood. So I think what we have to remember is that an environmental impact study is studying what the impact of development is on the environment. So the development envelopes for this project were established back in 2007, and everything surrounding those building envelopes has been set aside for golf course or environmental protection. So there's been no breach of the development envelopes that have long been planned for this development. So when Oak Bay came forward with an adjustment to the Marina townhouses and to Summerside, the environmental impact work was updated to say, given that there's an increase in the number of units being proposed, we've relooked at the environment. You're still within the same building envelopes, and we have no concerns about the impact of development on the environment. And in this case, if we focus just on the waterside application, the total number of units already approved for this site through the plan of condominium is 50. And so the reduction to 29 units, one would surmise, would be a reduced impact on the environment. Again, we're still within the established building envelope, and the number of units has been reduced from 50 to 29. But with respect to your comment about the environmental reporting, I did undertake to speak with Beacon Environmental and my clients about the format in which that is provided to MNRF, and I will respond back to you about that.
So just to finish that point, if I may, but there's been a lot of change since the original approval. Regardless of, you say the envelopes are the same, but there's more units here, less units there. There's quite a lot of change, including the removal of what they call detention ponds, which are adjacent, by the way, to the Georgian Bay Land Trust wetlands. And so any chemicals that are running off the property could be concerning. And that's why I raised this point, that it would be very helpful to have the public, make the public aware of the contention that, you know, there isn't a problem. So that's why I raised the point. Thank you.
With respect to the stormwater management, Councillor Cooper, initially there were a number of stormwater management ponds that were proposed that would manage surface flow. Over time, as you may be well aware, the technology has changed and improved, and now there is often the use of storm scepters that actually provide a better result for the environment. So in some instances within Oak Bay, the storm scepter approach is being proposed, which actually is a better outcome than a stormwater management pond.
Thank you for that answer. I would ask you to take a look at the study by Dr. Patchow Fraser recently and the findings that they found off Oak Bay. I think they would be best answered by your environmental firm. And sorry, Victoria.
Thank you. Just through your worship, to clarify for council. So the Georgian Bay Land Trust was on the mailing list for the application. However, you know, given with COVID, maybe someone isn't at the office to open the letters, but I would appreciate it if members of council who did receive that correspondence, if they could forward it to staff, and we can update the email address that they have, and we'll send them everything that they need so they have it on their files moving forward on the application. But they were circulated it, but we just didn't have an email address on file, so it was sent via mail.
Thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to the councillors that have more of a finger on the pulse, so to speak, with this development. I know there's a lot going on. It keeps you very busy, and it's good to hear your feedback on that from constituents. I also want to thank Phyllis. Phyllis, thank you for your comments on this secondary road. You bring up a really good point about the through traffic, you know, the cut through traffic. I'm not so sure that people have really thought about that, maybe not, but I think it would be a very good idea that someone to have that discussion with the public. I can see now that you pull the map up and say that, how that could happen very easily and make that road really busy. And it's, you know, human nature to do that kind of detouring when it's a shorter route, or if they think the other route's going to be too long. So maybe to the councillors that have more interaction with their constituents, maybe that should just sort of be put on the table, because I did not think of that myself until just now when you were looking at that. I have been one of the people that have been sort of proactive in the thinking of having a secondary road as being good, but I'm not so sure that's the case at this point.
Councillor
So-
Douglas, I don't want us to go too far down the secondary road, simply because that's not the topic in front of us right now. You're muted.
Okay, comment.
Any additional comments from anyone? Councillor Hazelton.
So very interesting discussion. Thank you for all the inputs so far. I would like to point out that given that this is a municipal water and sewer subdivision, that increasing or decreasing the units really doesn't have much impact on the environment. It appears that the stormwater and runoff is probably the one thing that is kind of universally of concern. I wanted to, given that the mayor and staff don't have access to this Jujube Land Trust letter, they are specifically asking that council don't make any decisions until they have had an opportunity to understand what the changes are and what the impacts are. And so I think that's a very important thing for us to consider, especially given that they are really managing those sensitive lands. I do have a specific question to our planner, Victoria, if you could help me. I had a resident forward me Development Services Report 2021-21, draft plan of condominium, waterside extension request. Are you aware of that? Do you have it?
I do recall authoring it, but I don't have it in front of me, but yes,
Okay.
I should be able to answer some questions.
So I've gone through it with a little bit of guidance from a resident, and the essence of what I'm getting out of it is there were, and I think Councillor Cooper referenced this earlier, there were agreements set up and environmental designs put in place quite a while ago. My understanding is that environmental designs that are more than 10 years old probably need to be revisited. This one here, I believe, is 15 years old. But what's interesting as I read through this document is it specifically states that prior to any approval for granting a condominium, amending, or whatever else, that stormwater and environmental matters need to be reviewed, reconsidered, and approved prior to that going off to the district. And I would like to understand, given that we now have an environmental consultant in place that we access from time to time, have we asked our environmental consultant to weigh in on these factors that appear to be in that report, staff report? And secondly, it would appear to me that this would be a very simple thing for that environmental consultant to do, because Neil Hutcherson, as I understand it, wrote that environmental report back in '06. And so firing it off to him for a review likely would be a fairly simple and quick process. But I'm wondering, have we done that? And is not that a requirement of this process?
So through your worship to Councillor Hazelton. So that's a great question. So when it comes to the previous studies, I have had conversations with Hutchinson, essentially notifying them that we will be submitting those documents to them for review for when the report comes to council for the overall subdivision plan and essentially the phases moving forward. This application to reduce the number of units that are on the site, I didn't feel it was appropriate to get an environmental review done at this zoning stage, given that there is still the site plan agreement stage to move forward with, as well as at the end of the day, it is the district that is going to, make the larger approvals for the later phases. So the zoning is what is in front of you today. But yes, Hutchinson has been notified that we are looking for their review and comment moving forward on the overall extension of this plan of subdivision. So that will address any future development phase changes. And that would likely, happen before any future rezoning that would potentially increase any units in the future phases happen.
So thank you for that. I guess my concern is still, unless I'm reading this agreement wrong, this staff report 2021-21, it seems to explicitly state that amending a condominium act or whatever the terminology is that we need to look at does require these stormwater and environmental factors to be revisited. And I guess I'm wondering how we can sidestep that given that fairly explicit language.
So through that, and I'll let Celeste make comments after as well. So through that extension request, because at the end of the day, the extension really does lie at the hands of the district, and the district is the approval authority for that piece. So they have, it's my understanding, they did do an initial revisitation of the review before they approved the extension of the condo. But again, Ms. Phillips can further that. So the township at that time, because essentially we were just a commenting agency on the extension request, we did not have the environmental, our environmental consultants look at it, but the district, it is my understanding they did do another review, but Ms. Phillips can give you some more detailed information, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Victoria. The plan of condominium and the changes to the plan of condominium are within the purview of the District of Muskoka, and they have received all of the engineering information that they require in order to make a decision on the condominium aspect. What's before the township is the zoning to reduce the number of units to 29. So it's not related directly to what the district is doing. The district is proceeding with the condominium application to extend the condominium, and a red line revision to the draft plan of condominium to remove the villas and insert the single detached dwellings.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Hazelton. Be it resolved, the Development Services Report 2021-47 dated June 15th, 2021, with respects to zoning bylaw amendment application Z2104 be received. And that Council enacts bylaw 2021-37 to rezone the subject lands, waterside, into a site-specific multiple residential type 4 exception 3C hold zone, in which in addition to the provisions of the RM4-3 zone would add the following provisions to section 9.4, table 9.6 RM4 exceptions. 1, modify block 14 within column 5 of RM4-3 exception to indicate the following: permit a maximum number of 29 single detached dwellings and permit a maximum number of 29 dwelling units. And 2, add the following clarification: regarding the consideration of yard setbacks, the entire condominium block will be considered as one lot. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. That's carried. All right, thank you very much. I believe we're overdue for our closed session. Do we have people in waiting, Ms. Way?
They're on standby.
Okay. I'm going to suggest that we go into closed and have them minimize their standby, and then we can come back to open to finish off this if closed allows. So I believe that means we have to get the heck out of here and reconnect.
But first, you should read the motion to go into closed.
Oh, that's a good point. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're the clerk.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Jarvis, whereas section 2392 of the Municipal Act, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going into closed for an LPAT appeal for Kings Farm Road and an LPAT appeal with regards to 818 Island, 820 Georgian Bay. And item C was withdrawn, and item D is for the Honey Harbor Road. Oh, and we're doing that at 12:20 p.m. All those in favor? Into close we go. Thank you very much.